Hello and welcome to The Fool and the Philosopher.
The Philosopher and the Fool.
I've been thinking a lot about social media and how to fix it.
Alright.
So, first I thought I'd outline a couple of the problems. So I read this YouTube comment that I thought was quite good, which was, it's kind of dystopian that in order to remain friends with people, we have to constantly text each other. You've become obligated to each other in this weird enmeshment system sort of thing. And I think what's going on, and now there's some people that they don't feel that way, they don't feel obligated, and I think social media works a lot better for them.
Yeah.
And I think what's going on is that before we've had social media of mail and we've had telephone, and people didn't like them and had a lot of complaints against them and still do.
Mail's slow, telephone's weird, you don't see the person, you sit there.
Well, mail as well. It was Mark Twain, I think. He would complain about always having to answer his mail and writing letters. And he talked about this issue where this was a thing that used to happen a lot with crossed letters. So you'd think of someone, you say, oh, I haven't sent them a letter in a while. You feel kind of bad about it. I'll send them a letter, give them an update on my life. So you write a letter and they write you a letter at the same time.
Yeah.
And then you're answering each other's letters back and forth in this weird mixed pattern. So Mark Twain's solution, he said, I don't know why this works, but what I found is the moment I think of someone and I think, man, I really need to send them a letter, I don't. And then I will find in a couple days a letter from them shall arrive in the mail because they thought of me at the exact same time. And then I reply to that letter.
Yeah.
Of course, by sharing that, then nobody's answering then. But it isn't. It was his sort of look at synchronicity, which he thought was cool. But people had problems with letters because they felt like it was an obligation. And Darwin spent several hours a day every morning just answering letters.
Yeah, well, I have on my phone PDF of the Tolkien letters, which was all the letters that his son published, talking about different things of his work and his battles with publishing companies and all that sort of thing. They're interesting to read. Like, some of them are like fan mail and all that stuff, but yeah.
Yeah, but people didn't like that obligation to an extent. So there's been problems. And then phones, yeah, like you said, you can't talk to the person properly. There's this disconnect. And
there used to be the problem that you go on your neighborhood phone and then a third neighbor would listen in on the conversation.
Yeah, well, the party lines, everyone could listen. But more than that, I think the issue was you're at your home and someone can ring at your phone and demand your time. It's like, no, I'm doing my own thing, and you think you can just come in here and take my time. You think you have any value? What are you, a communist? So social media is very commie, like, really. But people kind of made do. And now,
well, I got my vote for hating social media, call it communists.
There's another issue, actually, I think, which I haven't ever seen anyone make this connection. But millennials get made fun of a lot for being afraid of phone calls. And Gen Z, they don't get made fun of. I don't think they get made fun of it. They just don't do them.
Yeah.
They've just sort of given up on them. But millennials used to get made fun of for being afraid of phone calls. And I think that is totally missing the issue that why are all these millennials afraid of phone calls? What's going on here? And you say, well, the boomers and the Gen X, they're not afraid of phone calls, so it's not inherent to the phone, right? And I was thinking about my childhood, and phone calls, so talking on the phone was the place where I by far experienced the most negativity and anger towards me, completely out of whack with everything else in my life. People didn't yell at me in my day-to-day life, for the most part. I got yelled at on the phone. I got people saying, who do you think you are? Why are you calling here? I got people, and the thing is, that's from a very young age.
Yeah.
So your experience with people is that they yell at you through a phone.
Yeah.
Whereas for the boomers and the Gen Xers, they grew up with phones, but especially the boomers, but they were party lines that weren't as commonly used by everyone.
Yeah.
And they weren't expected to be using these phones all the time. Like, I was expected, you have to phone these people, you have to do this, you have to arrange this appointment for yourself. So first of all, you have to arrange an appointment for yourself. You're put in this high-stress situation as like an 8-year-old or a 10-year-old.
Well, also, I have the problem with dyslexia on phones. I really didn't like phone because if you didn't punch in the numbers fast enough, it would phone something completely random or like it'd reset your call. And so I had to look at the number, remember it, make sure I got it right, and go through my hand and then punch the whole thing in at one go or it messed up. And that was really stressful.
Do you remember a rotary phone? Were you?
I barely used it.
Okay. Yeah, I guess you would have been fairly young, but I wonder if that'd be better or worse. Because, you have that time while it's rotating to think, right? Yeah. You're like, you put in a 9 and you can just sit there for an hour. So you're made to do these appointments, and the appointments are rough because the person on the other end is frustrated because they're talking to a little kid, and you also can't see their expressions. And phones, for some reason, this isn't advertised everywhere. I think this should be common knowledge, but phones don't give a full range of sound. They chop it down.
Yeah.
So even people's emotions are distorted and their voice is distorted. They're chopping off the bottom and the top of the sound wave. So you're getting this unnatural sounding, like literally unnatural voice that is frustrated with you, and you can't see their expressions. That you can be frustrated with a kid and still smile at them, but you can't do that through a phone, even if the person on the other end is smiling. And then you're a kid, so you're making mistakes. So you phone the wrong house, and you're saying, I want to talk to Jimmy. And they're like, who is this? Why are you calling me? Jimmy, there's no Jimmy here. What's this prank call? And so you have to do these stressful things you don't want to do, like booking appointments for stuff you don't even want to do. It's like, book your dentist appointment. So, but I don't want to do the dentist appointment. Why are you making me do this? So you're putting kids, the phone is the place where the kid is put most out of their comfort zone of anything. And they're put out of their comfort zone it's good to be out of your comfort zone occasionally, right? But they're put out to a degree that is far beyond the pale. Whereas if you start using phones regularly as an adult, it's just, well, I've already dealt with annoying people and angry people and whatnot. And this is just another aspect of that. But for the millennial, the phone is where the angry people are.
Yeah.
So I do think this is why millennials and younger are actually afraid of phones. And for Gen Z, I think even more so, a phone call is the place where bad stuff happens. Your friend's grandparent or their parent dies, they phone you. A person in school dies, they phone you. You're in trouble at school, you get phoned. A phone, because phones are for important information now, they're where the bad news is, because all bad news is important news, or all important news is bad news, something like that. And so for Gen Z, I imagine that's what they get a lot, is this is where the bad news is.
Yeah.
Or it's the difficult talk with the parent, that's another thing. You probably shouldn't be doing difficult talks over the phone.
Yeah.
Better than text, but still, text is a horrible place for that.
Actually, in the cult book I'm reading, it's saying when you're like, if you want to communicate with someone, this book was written quite a while ago, so it's when phone calls were a lot more prevalent. But he's saying set up meetings with a phone, because you just can't communicate properly. Like, a phone should only be used to say, hey, I want to talk with you.
Yeah, that's another thing, actually, is I think that should be the only purpose for social media, is arranging in-person meetings with people. And now it gets tricky, because I think you can extend it to potentially...
Your whole manifesto is how to fix this. We were talking about the problems beforehand. Don't skip ahead.
No. The line... What are we talking about?
Social media, the phone.
Yeah.
The only reason you should have the phone is
right. Is to communicate with someone, or potentially to to use social media. The only reason to use social media should be to arrange in-person meetings with people, or potentially to transfer files or stuff like that, maybe. And I'm not even certain about that. So like, I need this Excel sheet, spreadsheet, send it over social media, something like that. Maybe that would be a case for it as well. And then, I guess asking for help, obviously, like, hey, my car broke down. But even then, I was thinking about this, right? The reason I kept my phone for a long time was I remembered when your car broke down and your phone was almost dead, and the person you phoned was me, and I was able to get you help to an extent, and because you would have been stranded on the road. But I was thinking about that. People didn't die like 20 years ago when they didn't have cell phones. If that happened, you might have had to sleep the night out on the highway, but it's not like you would have died. And maybe you would have learned something or two about something or other.
Yeah, I was landed a car with a faulty tire.
Yeah.
And I did someone a favor that what turned out not to be worth it.
Yeah. That's something you should learn.
Don't be a good Samaritan.
Yeah, seriously. No, I'm very serious. Like, maybe you should learn that, you are putting your own health, time, and safety at stake doing someone else a favor. And just because a person gives you a car doesn't mean it's going to work. And like, there's stuff you can learn there.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's your fault the car broke down, but there's still something you can learn about that. Like, okay, don't give a favor to anyone who asks, right?
Yeah.
Like, make it sure it's worth it. Make sure that, because why is their time more valuable than yours?
Yeah.
They can get someone else. They can pay someone to do it for them, right?
We know I was paid to do that, but still.
Yeah, and if it's worth it to you, it's worth it to you. But that is something, right?
Yeah.
There is a lesson there, and I'm not saying because you had the phone, it's a different lesson. So I'm not saying that you should have learned the other lesson. I'm just saying that you would have learned a lesson either way, right? Yeah. And it's not necessarily a bad thing if you didn't have a cell phone. Mm-hmm. Maybe you learn how to hitchhike and you get like murdered and dumped in this ditch.
Well, actually, I did have someone help me by replacing the tire.
And there's a lesson there. getting murdered and dumped in the... Yeah, no. And that's a story. Like the person that comes and helps you out, maybe they take you to their place and they give you a delicious spaghetti meal and you meet their daughter.
Murder you with a leg of lamb.
Yeah, and you meet their daughter and she's beautiful and lovely and she beats you to death with a leg of lamb and serves it to the police officers.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's life happens during these interesting moments. So the phone doesn't prevent disaster from happening. It just changes the nature of problems.
Yeah.
And so like people are, oh, you have to have your phone on you. You're going on this this boat trip, or you're going on this car drive or this road trip. And it's like, no, we'll figure something out. People have been figuring out for thousands of years how to get by without cell phones going on for trips, right? You could go on journeys, and maybe people were dying a bit more often, but I really don't think the amount of cases where a phone would save you is very large at all. Like, I think it's less than 1% of cases where a phone is actually going to... and that's of the cases where having a phone might do something at all. Most of the time you go out and drive and nothing breaks down. You don't need a phone in the first place. So, I think we are thinking this thing's more necessary than it is, for one thing. But new social media came along with texting and instant messaging and whatnot. And I think this is where...
You know, you say instant messaging and that just makes you sound old.
Okay, so when AOL came along, which is based on IRC chat, and you could suddenly communicate with people through the internet. This IRC protocol blew everyone's mind. I had an adult about 2 weeks ago, a full-grown adult man, call me old for owning CDs. I went, I don't know what to do with that information. I have cassettes. You didn't even ask about the cassettes.
Do you have any 8-tracks?
You have any 8-tracks? You got any?
Or those giant cassettes, and there's the
Those are the 8-tracks, yeah.
And the micro track as well.
You got any? Got any of them records? I grew
or
up
giant CDs. What are those called? Those? No, because there's records and there's also giant CDs.
I think there's small records. I don't know.
No, there's also giant CDs.
Don't know. But I mean, I grew up listening to records on a record player, so that's more of a technology here isn't in line with California, let's say.
Yes, we're back in time.
That's more that if something's good, it lasts longer here. So the Super Nintendo was around when I was a kid, even though it came out in like the 90s, in like 1990 or something, or 89.
Yeah.
And the Nintendo 64 and the Super Nintendo and the GameCube, even though they were all around when I was 10 or so, they weren't seen as iterations. They were seen as just 3 separate options. Like, oh, you could grab the Super Nintendo, or you could grab the 64, or you could grab the GameCube.
Basically, until the Switch came out, the Wii was seen as the new game console.
Yeah.
It's like the new fancy technology game console.
And funny thing around here, actually, is PlayStation PlayStation is a lot less popular around here for some reason. Xbox as well isn't super popular, but PlayStation in the rest of the world is the most popular company by far. PlayStation 2 is the most popular console of all time. But up here, like, you hardly know anyone that had these things, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I have 2 friends that had PlayStations.
I know a few more friends that had PlayStation, but still, no, the Nintendo was far more popular.
Yeah, everyone had a Nintendo or a Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or for me, everyone had Game Boys or DSs.
Well, yeah, my best friend's brother, he had a Game Boy, and you had to put 4 AA's into it and everything.
Well, Game Boy Advance is like Super Game Boy Advance is what.
Game Boy Advance SP.
Yeah, SP. That's it.
Yeah,
that's what everyone had.
So, anyways, what was I saying about instant chat? It's not old.
I don't know.
Instant chat isn't old, okay?
Right.
Well, instant messaging isn't old.
Yes.
Instant messaging was new to me in 2015.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
2015 wasn't that long ago.
It's almost 10 years.
It's 8 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And since 2014, I was deadly ill, horrible mental illness, massive injury. I'm basically still a 20-year-old with a mindset set in 2015 because I didn't really get a chance to live the last 8 years. So instant messaging is brand new. Okay?
It wasn't new in 2015.
Well, it was to me. I didn't have a phone until that year.
All right, texting and instant messaging.
Yeah, brand new technologies of 2015. So before 2015, life was perfect. But then texting was invented, and cell phones were invented, and everything went downhill. Because what happened was Steve Jobs in 2015 combined asynchronous and synchronous messaging. So
Was that in 2015?
what, cell phones?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think the iPhone came out in like 2012 or 2008.
The iPad was in 2007, I think. iPod, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, the iPod.
No, iPod Touch was 2007.
Yeah, the iPhone came out later. It was like 2010.
It was 2008, I think.
Really?
Yeah, something like
I
that.
thought there was a bit more time for the iPhone.
I don't think so, but anyways, no, but cell phones have been around for ages. Since,
Yeah, but the iPhone was a big one.
yeah, since like the 80s or something.
Because it changed texting from flip, tick, 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 where your thumbs are ridiculously close together, to flip one hand, tick, 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 tick.
Back in my day, we didn't have cell phones. Well, I didn't have cell phones. Everyone else had a cell phone. Back in my day, I didn't have a cell phone.
Same.
So, what the issue with instant messaging is that it combines asynchronous and synchronous communication methods. So asynchronous is something like the mail. You write a letter, you send it off, you wait for 2 weeks, you get it, you read it, you send it off. So there's this gap, right? And it's expected that it'll sit in the mailbox for a while. It'll sit at the post office for a while. It'll sit on your table for a while you think about it. You might not reply to it. That's asynchronous, right?
Yeah.
And then synchronous is right now what we're doing. We're talking to each other face to face, where there's instant communication back and forth. And so when you had IRC chat, it was...
Continue. I was just thinking of something else, but continue.
Or is it IRC relays or protocol? I don't know. Anyway, when you're using AOL, you are communicating back and forth instantly. So it's a synchronous form of communication through text. But you shut down the server and it goes away. So you can't send someone a message and wait around and expect it to be there.
Yeah.
As I understand it, I actually never used it, except very briefly with my neighbor friend over there, because we wanted to play Age of Empires, and we used Age of Empires built-in chat briefly to try to make it work.
Yeah.
Age of Empires 2. And we just could not figure out how on earth.
You were trying to set up a LAN connection in between your two houses.
Yeah, looking back, that's what was going on. But
That's exactly what went on.
But what's funny now is that
You
should
can actually
have.
do that.
But it should have worked, because Age of Empires 2 is kind of unique in that I don't know how Microsoft does it. They own the internet or something, but they actually choose the smallest possible link for you. So they basically say, here's the entire internet. We're going to find the shortest possible link, and if that's a LAN link, we'll make it a LAN link.
Yeah.
So they don't actually have a LAN mode for Age of Empires.
Yeah.
So I don't know why it didn't work for us. But anyways, probably internet was too slow through dial-up or something.
Yeah.
That was another annoying thing. It's like you talk on the phone to try to figure out, then you have to hang up to go on. It's a nightmare. So...
Yeah, the instant messaging. See, what I was thinking of is how weird would it have someone to speak to you? Because, like, you're describing it the other way around. But
Yeah.
I was thinking of, like, the memes. My dearest Beatrice, it has been a while since I have spoken with you. You are very attractive. I love your beautiful eyes. Now, imagine this, but the guy's sitting right in front of Beatrice. It goes on as, like, monologue for, like, I don't know, like a page worth of writing. And then she just listens to it the whole time. Then she responds like that.
No, she sits there for like a day and then she responds. Yeah, so... But then what happened when people thought, hey, it'd be really easy to store whatever text was sent. You just you send it to a text file, or you have a little server on your computer or whatever. Then you have this asynchronous plus synchronous mode where you can be chatting back and forth with someone, and then you have to leave. So you say, sorry, I'm AFK, and you go. And they send you a message for you to read when you get back. And suddenly they're essentially mailing you instead of instant messaging with you. And then you come back and you read it, but now they're away, so you send it back. But you're still conversing as if it's instantaneous and back and forth, because that was the medium that's what you were doing.
Yeah.
And so when I first started using social media back in 2012, I'm not old, and I'm not behind the times, but when I first started using social media in 2012, it was the most amazing thing ever, because I could talk to my friends anywhere, and it was really cool. And the thing was, that's what we did. So I would go onto Facebook, and I would talk to my friend, and we would talk back and forth, and I'd say, like, how's it going? And we'd have a conversation, and we'd talk for hours. Or we'd wake up in the middle of the night and talk to each other for hours. What?
Sorry, I've never had this experience of talking over social media.
Yeah, so this, I'll get into it maybe then.
No, I'll get into it.
Right.
It's because it is painful for me to use social media. I hate texting and typing because I have to spell everything correctly, and so I don't bother because I hate that.
Well, you can also like talk on the phone. I used to talk on the phone all the time.
I did talk on the phone, but I hated using social media.
Yeah, so I guess I did use phones occasionally, but I didn't actually use them that often because, again, I had phone anxiety as well. But I would occasionally talk on the phone with my friend, but far less often. I didn't even like phoning my friends. But yeah, so first time I used modern social media beyond phones, I guess, was
You
2012.
use Facebook, the modern social media.
Yeah, back in 2012, and it was amazing because you could communicate. So I could take like my laptop with me, or well, my netbook, and I could communicate with people as long as I had internet. I could talk to people. It was crazy.
Yeah.
And then I got my cell phone in 2015, and I could. It blew my mind. I was sitting in a restaurant, and a friend had sent me a message on Facebook, and I got it on my phone, and I was like, "What? I'm sitting in a restaurant. Like I'm in another dimension, right? I'm not in the internet dimension right now." And I can still communicate with this person. It's like my own private portal into a shared world where I can talk to a person.
Yeah.
It's so hard to describe how magical and unique the experience was. The closest I can come is the time I took my DS and I went and sat in a grotto in the woods and played Pokemon. And it was like, I can hunt for Pokemon in the middle of nature with no one around. It's like I'm in a fantasy. It's like I'm in a literal fantasy world.
Yeah.
And that's what it felt like. It felt like I had opened up a magical portal, and my friend was in there, and I was talking to her through this portal. It was incredible. I was like, wow, the cell phone's the craziest, coolest thing ever. And that was great, because we were using it for synchronous communication.
Yeah.
But it's also convenient to say, hey, you want to do something tomorrow? And you send that message to a person that you're not talking to at that moment.
Yeah.
And then they reply back to you, and they say, oh, yeah, sure, I'll do that. And so now you're using it as asynchronous. And what can even happen, and this is where it gets really bad, and this is, I've been struggling with this, and I figured it out on my own, but I watched a video. He's called Healthy Gamer GG, I think. He's a psychiatrist who does YouTube videos.
All right.
And he was talking about how to text. It's a great video on how to text. I highly recommend it. But he was talking about how, he didn't say it in these words, but I think it really applies. Everyone becomes borderline over text, like they get BPD, because what you do is you start trying to control people. Because what happened over the years was I would talk to my friends, and I would have a great time. We're going back and forth, and this is so cool. It's like I can just hang out with my friends anywhere. I don't even need to be near them.
Yeah.
I used to have a walkie-talkie. My friend that I played Age of Empires with, we had a walkie-talkie, and we could communicate just anywhere. And we got permission from our parents. Anytime during the summer, I could bike over to his house and hang out over with him without asking permission from his parents or my parents. Yeah. Right, that's the coolest thing ever. We're independent adults, basically. I can just bike over to your house and we can go biking, go terrorizing the neighborhood. Yeah. And we have walkie-talkies. We can communicate long distance whenever we want. It's super cool.
Yeah.
And this was that again. It's this magical thing. But what happened was sometimes people are busy, right? So they don't reply. Yeah. And then you're like, oh, but I was having so much fun, and they're not replying. And what it feels like, it's like, okay, they're busy, they're away from their phone, right? Because this is actually an asynchronous mode of communication, even if it doesn't feel like it. But what it feels like is like you and I are sitting here talking, and you suddenly get up and walk out of the room. And I'm like, hey, what? But we were talking. And then I'm like, okay, fine, I'm going to go get a drink until you come back. And then you come back in, and you're like, what, weren't we just talking? And then I come back, and then you get up. And suddenly we're in this place where we're disrespecting each other back and forth. And so I'm like, I want some respect. And so you get up and I'm like, hey, whoa. No, don't go and get a drink. I got something really cool to tell you. So I'm trying to now please you. I'm like, I'm going to tell you all the coolest things to keep you there, to keep you engaged. Because I don't want to lose my friend, because I'm losing my friend right now. And so I'm going to try to control you. I'm going to try to tell you things that make you respond to me. And then I'll get wild. I'm going to say crazy things that maybe I don't mean, just to get you to say stuff to me. Mm-hmm. I just really want you to reply. And I start getting desperate, and I start saying stuff like, oh, you're so stupid, haha, just kidding, and stuff like that to really, and worse.
Yeah.
To get you to reply. And so you literally become, as I've called borderlines, a power bottom, right? Where you're trying to control a person by molding yourself to them, grafting yourself to them, adapting to them. And so what you do is you make yourself less desirable because you have no personality. And what the weird thing is, people always want other people to like them, right? And so they're always trying to do what they think that person will want. But people don't like people that try to like them. They like personalities. They like personalities that they grind against and don't fully mesh with them. Like one of my best friends, he's this very harsh jerk to people. He doesn't what do you call it? He doesn't sugarcoat anything.
Yeah.
And one time I said this very mean joke to him. I basically called him an old lecher going after young women, and and it was mean because it was semi true. His girlfriend's way younger than him, but it's not like a bad age gap. It's just, it's enough that they were kind of sensitive about it, and I made a joke about it. And I was like, geez, that was a bit far. And so after our friends, we stopped hanging out. Like this, it was a bunch of friends all together. I went to side with him basically and said, well, this was during COVID, so I went to side with him as in everyone left the Zoom call but me and him. And I said to him, okay, hey, I'm sorry that was out of line. And he's like, you apologize too much. And I was like, I like you. He's like, yeah, it was funny. It was harsh, but it was funny. You apologize too much. And so you like people that, if he had just been like trying to suck up to me and be like, or I was trying to suck up to him, so we're in perfect synchrony and we never argue, we never say anything mean to each other. It's like, I hate that person. So what happens is the more you try to get the person on the phone to respond to you, the more you try to be like them to get them to like you, the more you talk like them. Like, oh, they use smiley faces, I'll use a smiley face. Oh, they really like talking. I get a lot of replies when we talk about Star Wars. I don't like Star Wars that much, but I really want to get a reply from this person, so I'm going to talk about Star Wars. You actually drive them away. Yeah. And so they start getting up in this metaphorical virtual world more and more often. People wouldn't do that in real life, right? If they got sick of you, they'd say, I'm sick of you, and leave. They wouldn't just get up and leave. So you'd actually at least get that clue that, okay, maybe I'm messing with this person. But instead, you don't get that clue. And so you keep sending them messages, and you're trying more and more to make them like you. And you're actually driving them more and more away. And they might be doing the same to you or to someone else at the same time. And so you're becoming even more and more desperate to reply to them. So yeah, social media makes you borderline.
Yeah, well, what you're saying is interesting to me because it makes me reflect on, I was thinking how I actually use social media. And like, especially texting, like Facebook and phone texting, I've never considered it like sending the mail, like the unsynchronistic. Yeah. I've always thought of it as synchronistic. And so I had this experience.
But it's not.
It's not, but that's how I treat it.
Yeah.
But I had this experience when I was in Victoria, which is... my friends were all at a guy's apartment. We were there. And I was getting pretty bad sunburn while I was in Victoria. It's really bright out. And I said, is there a store nearby that I can go get sunscreen at? And they said, oh yeah, you just like walk down this place and you can get there. It's going to be a long walk. You should probably take the bus. And I was like, no, I think I'll walk. And they're like, okay. So we're planning to go get supper. So we're going to head downtown in like an hour or two. And I was like, okay. And I said, I might head back to the guy's house I'm staying at, or I might meet up with you, whatever. So I head there, I got sunscreen, I walk back, and then I send a message to the person whose house they're staying at. I was like, hey, I came back, did you guys head downtown or not? And I didn't get a response. And so I act like a panicked dog so I sent the message originally through Facebook. Then I sent him a text message. Then I used the Facebook's call function. Then I sent him a message through Discord, and basically every single medium I could think of to communicate with him. Because I think of things as instant messaging, and that's how I've always treated them. And so when I send someone a message, and I probably shouldn't do this to an extent, but I'm like, I'm talking to you now. And I rarely send messages. Even that's not fair to them to an extent.
Oh, it's not fair to them at all.
Yeah.
But the other thing there is you're sending the message, and if they don't reply, it's like you're sitting there with them, right? So I say something to you, and you don't respond whatsoever. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, geez, did I say something wrong? Or do they not like me? Do they not want to reply to me now? They're not my friend anymore because they're not talking to me, right? Instead of it being, I sent a mail through the mail.
Yeah.
And the postman died, and now the mail's not getting through.
Yeah.
That's the other crazy thing is message communication is really difficult. I have no idea how YouTube works, actually, because even text messages get lost all the time.
Yeah.
And we've talked about it before, there's the messenger paradox, where there's no way to tell that you've actually sent a message.
Well, we had for years this massive problem with our dad, which is...
Oh yeah, he thought we weren't replying to him or anything. Yeah. And he was using iPhone's built-in messaging app, which doesn't work with Samsung.
Yeah.
So he's like, why did you guys reply to me? It's like, we never got any messages ever?
Yeah.
It's like, were you sending messages?
Yeah, it's like we have no record of receiving them.
But even then, right, you shouldn't, even if the letters are getting through, you shouldn't expect a response.
Yeah.
Because you aren't talking to a person. You're sending them a letter.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't really be...
You shouldn't expect someone to pick up a phone.
Yeah. And even then, when you phone someone, you shouldn't expect them to pick up a phone, because what right do you have to their time? They can do whatever they want. You have no right to doing what they're doing right now, what they're doing at that moment.
Yeah.
You have no right to another person's time, unless you're a communist, literally. And
now communicate through carrier pigeon.
another thing that Healthy Gamer GG said was, he talked about ghosting, right? Because this is that sort of phenomenon. And he said, okay, so what is ghosting?
I just want to, though, like, that's very, like, I think I will change how I
Try to view it.
Yeah, like sending people's messages, because like sending messages like a panicked dog, like he said, is
Well, you also don't feel good about yourself.
no.
Yeah. You feel like you're damaging your own self-respect. I've done it, and you're like, oh man, I feel like you make yourself feel lesser than them.
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh, I'm worse than them because they're the cool ones who aren't responding.
And in that one situation, I was sending messages like that because it was time sensitive to me.
Yeah.
And I didn't know if they were there or not. I was like, should I head downtown and look for them?
So that's another problem that
I don't think that's an excuse that it's time sensitive. It's just that's part of it.
No, this is a problem that instant communication does in general, right?
Yeah.
You guys didn't make any plans before you split up.
Yeah.
10 years ago, that wouldn't have been the case whatsoever.
Yeah, you're right.
And this is something that actually really annoys me.
Yeah, no, you're right. Because what should have done is, because they were there, like they were still in the place, and they came downstairs and we got on the bus together. What should have happened is, all right, I'm walking to there. It's going to take me probably about an hour to get there back again. And they said, okay, we're going to be playing Smash Bros up in his apartment. So we're going to stick around for an hour. Then you come back, like ring the doorbell. The doorbell wasn't working, but still, like ring the doorbell. Metaphorically, like come back, and we'll all head down to like this restaurant, like San Antonio's. We'll head down to San Antonio's. If you miss us, then just go to San Antonio's, and we'll meet up there.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what you would have done 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And what I see now, I was talking to our mom about this, and it annoys her as well. People, they'll be like, okay, we're going to meet up. So let's say it's Tuesday right now, right?
Yeah.
We're going to meet up Saturday, hour after lunch, 1 o'clock, 1:30. We'll meet up, and we'll go for a hike. It's like, okay, so we're meeting up on Saturday, 1:30. And then on Saturday, you get a phone call from that person at 10:30. We still doing the hike? It's like, yeah, we already planned that. Like, what are you doing? Yeah. And people even do that multiple times. They'll be like, so we're doing the hike tomorrow, right? Yeah. And then on the day, they're like, so we're doing the hike. Like, yes. And why the people are doing that is because they've been burned before.
Yeah.
They have had people bail out and ditch them on their plans before. And the reason people bail out and ditch their plans is because they got a better offer, or they forgot about it and got an offer through text, because they're suddenly like, oh, I don't have a schedule anymore. I just have, oh, this person wants to do something. I'll do it right now. You're not planning out your hours or your life anymore. I'm not saying that you should schedule your whole life. I really don't like schedules. Personally, what I like to do is phone someone up and say, hey, you free right now? No? Okay, never mind. I like doing that. But if you make a plan, you should keep it. And that's the reason I like doing the spontaneous thing, because I don't like having this obligation to keep, but I will keep that obligation.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of people say, I don't like keeping obligations, so I won't keep them, but I'll make them. It's like, if you don't want to keep it, don't make it.
Yeah.
And so it's a two-pronged thing where...
Well, I think you're probably similar to me. If you have an obligation coming up, like
it takes over your life.
You obsess over it until you hit it.
And this is something that people with ADHD get, apparently, where the day of, you don't do anything until...
Yep, that is very true for me.
It's like, okay, 3 p.m. I have a dentist appointment for half an hour. All right, I will be sitting on the couch until 2:30.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've had to train myself not to do that.
I don't know if I can not do that. Like, it's very hard. And I was actually...
As I said, I've had to train myself.
I heard a person...
Like, it's not like, oh, I'm just not going to not do that. It's just like building up over time. It's like, all right, I can do this until that point, and I will work on this until that point.
You have to force yourself, like...
I think it's like, when the things I do before I have something to go do, they're incredibly simple. Like, I can't do anything complex. I have to do simple stuff before that.
You might even have to force yourself, like, all right, you will play Factorio from... It's like, you will take heroin from 1 until 2, so you're doing something. I don't care how productive it is. You need to do something. I'm not saying Factorio isn't productive. I'm trying to think of like it's something I want to go into another time. I have it on this list, but I have troubles doing stuff that aren't beneficial to other people, or that other people would view as productive. Like having fun for myself makes me feel guilty. So if I need to burn time, as it were, then I will need to do something that other people would consider productive, like making money or writing or whatever they think I need to be doing.
That's something I've also had to overcome.
Like people are like, oh, you're a writer, so you should be writing all the time. And what it means is actually, I don't like talking about my writing because then people have expectations of me writing.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, what are you writing right now? It's like, well, I'm not because I didn't want to. And then I'd write less.
Yeah.
And so I keep it to myself. But what that means then is when people say, what have you been up to? It's like, nothing.
Yeah, well, so I will be asked, are you free at this point in time? And for me, it's that point in time in my mind is scheduled as nebulous. Maybe I'll just lie on my bed. Maybe I will write something. Or, well, sorry, maybe I'll read something. Maybe I'll play some video games. Or maybe I'll edit a video at that point. And that maybe edit the video, like I have a plan that I might edit a video there. And that's quite important. That's a time sink for me. And it's like, no, that time's not free. And other people would look at it and it's like, well, you were free that whole time. It's like, no.
Yeah, and again, they think they have a right to your time with that. And that's not good. It's all tied together because I want to talk about bad schemas as well, because that's a bad schema. Nobody is entitled to your time. Your time is your own, and free time for yourself is your own free time for yourself.
Yeah, it's not even completely free time. It's a nebulous time of I might do some work in there.
But you don't, that's the thing. No, it is free time because you having to do work. No, you don't. You can have fun.
Yeah.
It's not, I will do work or I will see my friend, right? It's I will have me time or I will have they time. Yeah. But I can have me time, and my me time may or may not include what people might consider my work. My me time might just be me sitting on the couch. My me time might be me watching an anime.
Yeah.
My me time, like, you're doing the most despicable, least productive thing possible, watching anime, but it's your time for you. And no one can take that away from you.
This feels like an attack to me because I've started watching more anime again.
No, but seriously, you should be watching it, right? Like, if you enjoy it, then you should be doing it. And by if you enjoy it...
Cocaine.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Depend. Like, I don't think... At some sense, I don't think you're enjoying cocaine. The problem with chemical addictions, though, is you get into this issue of even when you stop enjoying it, you can't keep going. So you do need a bit of foresight with that, I guess. It's like staying up late, right? You need foresight, even though you are enjoying yourself in the moment. So that is a trickier one.
I've actually come to the conclusion that staying up late, though, you aren't enjoying yourself. You only think you're enjoying yourself. Because when you start getting really tired, you get into this weird mindset. It's like, I'm having fun. I'm still awake. But your level of enjoyment has dropped significantly.
Depends. Sometimes I'm in a flow state where it breaks the next day. Like first time I played Slay the Spire, I played for like 6 hours straight.
That was the first thing for me playing Cyberpunk. When I first played that game, I realized that it was 5 a.m. And like long download. I launched the game at 10, and then I realized it was 5 a.m. and I was like, oh god.
But the thing is, you go to sleep, you wake up, and the game is never as fun again.
Yeah.
And so sometimes that flow state is worth it to stay into. Sometimes there is this magic in that moment. Like when you're writing or working on an art project, sometimes you will never have, not that you'll never have it again, but these are rare moments that maybe should be utilized. Yeah. Where you are on top form and you're unable to stop. Maybe you shouldn't force yourself to stop. Maybe you should keep it going. I've had those, like you're partying with friends sometimes, and it's just this magical moment, and ending it early, you're not going back to that state necessarily.
Yeah.
Although people feel that once or twice, and then they stay up late at every party hoping for it, and you don't get it every time. So there's a give and take there. But like I've told you about it, and I think I've talked about it on the podcast, like the best night of my life, as it were. Yeah. Where that was one where it's like, okay, bedtime's 10 o'clock, but no, I'm going to stay up an extra 2-3 hours.
Yeah.
And I don't regret that in the slightest, because that was a magical moment that you don't get back. And you just keep it going. You're like, nope, the magic's not going to end. I'm going to keep it going. Because sometimes starting the spell is harder than keeping the spell going.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this bad schema of if you're not doing what other people expect of you, then you're being wasteful of your time. Like, oh, you're a YouTuber, you should be making YouTube videos, or you're wasting your time. Like, oh, sure, you don't want to see me on Saturday. Yeah, that's fine, because you're a YouTuber. You got to make YouTube videos. And then you feel like, oh, I got to make YouTube videos, even though all I want to do is watch anime. It's like, no, you should have your day to watch anime.
I actually cleared out that closet in our room.
Mm-hmm.
I cleared it out I reorganized my whole room because I was at a friend's house and they were moving. But even before they were moving, like their house had fallen quite a bit of disaster. I was thinking like, man, their house is so messy. I really don't like staying in this place just because of how messy it is, and it's kind of like this gross feeling.
Yeah.
And I was like, why am I judging? Like my house is probably about the equivalent amount of mess. And so when I got home, I actually started reorganizing my room and I cleaned it up. And
So now you can judge.
partly, but also it's just nice to live in a clean room. And when I was redoing the closet, I left one spot because I've had this thought for years of I really want a part of the closet which I can actually, like, if I wanted to, I could put my laptop there and I could use it as a sound studio, or I could put like some art stuff there and use it as a standing desk. And also, there's like this spot on the floor which I usually would like fill with trunks because it's just convenient. But it's like, no, I want the ability to be able to stand right here, so there can't be a trunk there. And I was like, I also want the ability just to curl up and like close the door, and like be this dark little like exclusionary box. I haven't done that yet, but I have the option now because I cleaned it up of like a semi isolation chamber I basically constructed. And it's like, oh, you're a YouTuber, you should be working on YouTube. And I'm just like curled up in a ball in a closet in the isolation chamber.
So I've been reading the Not Dresden Files. I've been reading the Dresden Files fanfic, which is so well written. I kind of prefer it to the Books After Changes. And it takes place after Changes. It's an alternate world where instead of Dresden being a ghost and all that stuff that happens after Changes, instead he and Meg get transported to the Game of Thrones universe.
Okay, I think you should be taking off the fanfics now.
It's the first good one I've read. And it's really well done. But there's this moment in it that I sort of expanded and applied. I've been thinking about where parents don't say to your kids, like, oh, it's a beautiful day, you need to go outside, right? Because then what you're telling them, so I wrote it out a bit, but you tell your kids it's too nice to be inside. And, you also say to them, like, I haven't seen you in a while, so you have to see me, that sort of thing, right? And so I've come to realize I'll wait around hoping my forced, not natural boredom, I make myself be bored because I don't want to be doing things I want to do. I want to do the things I should be doing.
Yeah.
So I will be bored, not because I'm bored. Sometimes you need to be bored. Yeah. But I will be bored not because because I should be bored, but because I'm forcing myself to be bored so that I'll want to do the things that I should be doing. It's like applying for a job or spending time with a friend or a parent or being a good kid or a good grandkid or not wasting my time playing video games inside when it's so nice. So when you tell your kid that, like, it's too nice to be playing video games, what you're saying is, when it's beautiful, when it's free, when you can do anything, the world is yours because, you can do anything when it's sunny, right? When it's raining, you're trapped. When it's sunny, you are free. So what you're telling your kid is, when you're free, when it's sunny, when you are warm, you have obligations. Which means that this happens for me. I still dread the sun, and I revel and love rainy days, and I like being sick because then I'm free. I can actually be myself and no one will have expectations of me. Because when I'm sick, then people can't say you should be doing this. And when it's rainy, then I'm forced to be inside and doing the stuff I want to do.
I don't like how true those words are, because that's awful.
And what you have to remember is that there is a beautiful, luxurious indulgence, that's a rare treat to indulge in, of playing video games inside when it's sunny and warm out.
Yeah.
It's more fun when it's warm and sunny out. You're like, this is beautiful indulgence. This is a good thing. Freedom should let you be free, not restrict you. And there's a little quote here I found, which you'll probably recognize, which I think is really quite good, actually. I swear by my life and by my love of it that I will never live for the sake of another man, nor ask another man to live for mine.
Sounds familiar. I don't recognize where it's from.
John Galt.
Ah.
I swear by my love of life and my love of it that I will never live for the sake of another man, nor ask another man to live for mine.
Yeah, no, that's John Galt.
Do what you want, live in that beautiful moment. And I think this might actually be related to why I don't like JRPGs. I think it might be guilt. I think it might be that I don't have the time to be luxuriating in the pointlessness of the JRPG. The pointlessness in quotation marks, obviously, because I think people obviously find a great beauty in them, and JRPGs tend to show these beautiful relationships within them and these wonderful parents and whatnot. And I think people find that really warm and cozy. But it's like, yeah, but you can find that quicker and more efficiently in a book, and people won't yell at you for reading a book. And you can take a book outside. You can't take a game outside. And you only have half an hour of video game time per day. And you don't want to spend 6 weeks sitting through cutscenes to get to the actual gameplay.
Yeah.
I think that might be part of it. I also think there's a lot about JRPGs I don't like, but I think that might be part of it.
Yeah. No, that psychopathic teacher I talked about on the last podcast. The guy who made us read Atlas Shrugged. The person who did the whole thing with the projector.
Yeah.
I was really thinking about how he made us read Atlas Shrugged. Like, that's his project. So he made us... it's really weird because I mentioned to people like Atlas Shrugged, Ayn Rand, and they recoil like I'm talking about Mein Kampf or like the or Necronomicon.
Well, objectivism, it seems very selfish.
Yeah. Well, but it's like even like just like like Ayn Rand, she's the evil thing, like, and it's objectivism. But this, I don't know, the brass balls on this, like a university teacher in Lethbridge running an arts program.
But isn't Lethbridge a bit more like...
No, Lethbridge is super liberal.
But aren't they? Isn't it Alberta?
Yeah, it's one of the liberal strongholds of Alberta. It's a pure university town. And so, like, the brass balls on this man.
I like that.
Well, he, like, that's his sort of personality, though. Like, students apparently really didn't like it. Like, they're constantly complaining about him because of just, he was such a character in that way of, like, all right, we're going to read a book about objectivism. I don't care if you don't agree with it or not. It's, like, he had some good reasons because his whole class, even though it's called New Media, really, I don't know if you could have us feel like, it's not psychology or sociology, but it's the study of human nature. Like, that's really what his class was. Like, his New Media class was human nature in art. And it's called New Media, but it's human nature in art. It's like, he taught us a few things, like, this is how you make a computer program, this is how you use Photoshop, that sorts of, like, he taught practical. But the whole thing he wanted to explore was human nature and using these different mediums to look at human nature.
Yeah, that's how you do art.
Mm-hmm.
Art has to be... You can't be an artist if you haven't lived, and you can't be an artist if you're not speaking to something.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably one of the bigger complaints with Ayn Rand is the pushing a message so hard. Yeah. But on the other hand, she is at least saying something. Like, she's saying something important in it. And there's this funny thing, right, with socialism and objectivism.
Yeah.
Where socialism is sharing, and sharing is good.
Yeah.
And objectivism is selfish and mean and cruel, right? But the end result of an objectivist world versus a socialist world, an objectivist world is a much nicer world than a socialist world. And you see that because the closest thing we have to an objectivist world is the United States and the Nordic countries.
Yeah.
They are these cold, cruel places where people don't like their neighbors, they don't talk to them, and they don't smile at strangers. And the United States, they do that just a bit more so. But the Nordic countries, they don't do this at all.
Yeah.
And the countries run amazingly, and people's lives are amazing and rich and happy and healthy, and their friendships are great. It's but not as deep as the more like the Latin countries, where they're much more sharing and caring and kind and healthy, or not healthy, sorry, happy and like, oh, you're friends with everyone, and you meet a guy in the street and you're friends with them, and you have gang violence everywhere, and everyone gets in a fight, and you're avoiding the police, and you're in gang shootouts, and your countries are falling apart, and because there are counterintuitive behaviors.
Yeah.
You're like, well, I don't want to be... So there's a lot of people, I think, that are going along with this woke stuff that won't in the future. And the only reason they're going along right now is because they don't want to be the mean, cruel people, right? They want to be nice, and sharing and caring is nice. So you have to be for equity, you have to be for diversity, you have to be for inclusion. But you aren't furthering any of the goals you think you are. You're just being a hypocrite. Like, you are praying in the street to false gods.
Yeah.
And objectivism, although I'm not on board with it fully, like I said, it's the perfect defense against cluster B.
Yeah.
And socialism is essentially the political version of cluster B.
I think from Atlas Shrugged, the character of Reardon would hurt you to read.
So the
inventor of Reardon Steel, like his life, like, I think it would hurt you.
So cluster B people, this is important actually. Cluster B people, when people start putting up boundaries, not even going away from them or anything, they just put up boundaries. They say, no, I'm not going to be your chauffeur around town. I'm just going to, you don't even have to be mean about it. You're like, hey, drive me to the store. It's like, no, I'm working on my business right now. Sorry, I needed to get food for us both even, let's say. No, sorry, I'm not going to do that. Or, no, I'm doing my own thing. Or it's like, go biking with me. It's like, no, I don't like biking. right? You're doing what you want. They want you to do what they want, right? But you just set up some very reasonable boundaries. They see you as cruel and uncaring and narcissistic a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Like narcissists see everyone else as narcissists because they're like, how could this person be so cruel and uncaring that they won't do what I want them to?
They must be obsessed with themselves.
Yeah. And so it's the exact same thing for socialists. It's like, how can you be so cruel and uncaring to be healthy and normal and sane? Because boundaries and consent mean that you are separate from that person and they don't have access to all your resources.
So what you're saying is I should move to Norway so everyone glare at me while I'm walking on the street.
Well, not for that reason, but for everything else, yeah.
Yeah, I know.
And I think the only country maybe that can do both is Japan. And,
They're a collectivist society.
but most collectivist society are socialist.
But they're not.
Well, they're not. Most of them aren't socialist, but there's this overlap with socialism, right?
Yeah.
But Japan isn't socialist whatsoever.
No.
And so
They're filthy capitalists.
So maybe Korea as well. I don't know much about Korea actually.
I mean, they both have rampant suicide problems right now, Japan and Korea. So take from that what you will.
Yeah, I'm not saying that they're the model we should follow. I still think Norway is probably the best, or Finland is probably the best country on earth to follow. Sweden to an extent, but they've got like political issues with just their they keep like flip-flopping. They're like,
Sweden also has radioactive pigs in it.
do they?
Yes, they've spread that far.
They're everywhere. Well, Finland probably does too then.
Yeah, no, they're going all throughout the Nordic, like they're spreading, so they're in Eastern Europe. And
But yeah, if you don't understand human nature, that's why Rejoice, a Knife to the Heart really was sad for me, because Steven Erikson, Malazan author, just showed that he didn't understand humans at all. There's right humans and there's wrong humans. There's not people that have a different view of the same object. And so your teacher, he's showing you art is understanding human nature. And that's why these critical theorists that make propaganda pieces as movies, that's why nobody likes their movies, because they don't understand humans. They're not humans. Yeah. They're socialist robots.
One of the brilliant other things they did. So here's the thing about him making us read that book is like that book was to get a perspective of human nature, and so what he did, this book was actually rated to a project. So he said, read this book, then pick one quote from it, like one line. It could be any line. It doesn't even have to be a famous line in the story. And then using Photoshop and art, create a picture based on that quote. And so he did two things with that, which I think...
Did he use that Pokemon splash screen with a cutout of a man? Who's John Galt?
I mean, you could have done that, and that if you'd read the book, that might have worked for him. But basically, what he did is this assignment was to read the book. So some people like, it's an art class, right? So I don't want to read this book. I'm just going to pick a quote, like, the Blue Lanterns, because there's this scene with this Blue Lanterns, and this is why my classmate did this. And it's like this cool scene with Blue Lanterns. So she like read that scene quickly, and so she drew this picture of like John Galt, tried to draw John Galt. He's an incredibly hard character to draw. Like, I had so much trouble trying to make him. And then she had like these chains coming off, and they're like hanging on these blue lanterns. And it's this beautiful piece of art that she drew. It looked really good, and like had Photoshop, which was relevant, so she made sure to do that in there. And he gave her 60% on it. And he said, I considered putting it lower than that, he's telling us. And he says, why? His whole reasoning is she didn't read the book, because that scene was wrong. Like, it
didn't understand the scene.
It didn't understand the scene, didn't understand the purpose of the lanterns, and he's like, that's not what the assignment was. It wasn't pictures. Like, for me, my quote was, who is John Galt? And basically you've seen that picture, but it shows a man basically staring out, and I tried to like make his expression correct, because that was the hardest thing, is getting his expression correct. And it's all the different inventions going on and how he influenced the world. And he's like standing on a train and it's collapsing beneath him, and the airplane's exploding, and there's like these wires. So it's like all the stuff that John Galt influenced. Like, but who is he? And it's just this really ordinary looking guy with a really messed up face. Because I've told you, he's the man without pain. And that's like, and that's like, when you look at him, you realize he is free of everyone else. And he's without pain.
So... ghosting. There's something there I want to add, actually. I don't remember who said it, but I was watching this video on plastic surgery, and I was like, why would anyone do this? The elective surgery, right? Because the surgery, it's painful, and you have to go through all this recovery period, and it's over. But after that, I don't know if this is for all plastic surgeries, but I think it's for most of them, maybe all of them. You're restricted in what you can do for the rest of your life. So for an obvious example that isn't quite plastic surgery, hip replacement. You can't do extreme sports after you get a hip replacement.
Yeah.
Nose job, you might have troubles breathing, so you're not going to be doing like running or sprinting, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Breast implants, you can't surf anymore. And you can't do like high intensity running and stuff. Because you're putting pressure on your chest when you're on the board. So yeah. So you are permanently limiting your life.
Yeah.
By doing these things. And I thought, why would anyone do that, right? But I was thinking, so most people that get plastic surgery are happier afterwards. Their life satisfaction goes up, and they're happy with the results.
Yeah.
Which is not the result that makes quite the intuitive sense in some ways, but the at least the people that report on all the studies that have been done, plastic surgery seems to improve the quality of your life.
All right.
But it limits you entirely. So I was thinking about this, and I was thinking, okay, so you are voluntarily sacrificing freedom in order to gain this happiness, right?
Yeah.
It's like, no, you shouldn't do that. You should remain free. But the thing about freedom is that the unbridled pursuit of freedom is a chain in of itself.
Yes.
Because you're sacrificing happiness for freedom at that point. And you're saying, so what's the point of freedom? It's like, if you... And so I was thinking, right, you... story idea I've been working on for like, I don't know, 15 years, but I didn't realize how profound it was. I thought it was stupid. I made it as a dumb joke, but I've been working on it. But I realized it's actually quite profound. Like, would you give yourself the ability to fly, but you can, or no, okay, so here's the red button, right?
Yeah.
You press this button, you can teleport at will, anywhere on Earth, as fast as you want.
Yeah.
But you can never enter Kazakhstan, ever, for the rest of your life. And you go, well, teleport powers, but all I would be thinking about is how I couldn't enter Kazakhstan, right? But are you ever going to enter Kazakhstan in your life, ever? They've got some cool stuff. They've got the portal to hell. They've got the giant aether portal that they built. They've got the beautiful murals of the falcons and the horses, but you're probably never going to go there anyways.
Yeah.
And so this is basically a free superpower.
Yeah.
And so all you're doing is needlessly restricting yourself by saying, well, no, but what if I want to go... Sometimes you have to make a choice and make a sacrifice. And so these people get into plastic surgeries. It's not stupid. It's like, no, they have made their choice. I would rather look more like the person I want to look like than have this freedom. I'm never going to surf. I'm never going to be a long distance runner. I'm never going to be like a trick ski jumper. Who cares?
Yeah.
I'm not going to be afraid of that. At some point, and this is what memento mori, remember that you must die, right?
Yeah.
At some point you're going to die. So already you have that limitation there where you say you're making choices every day because at some point you're going to die.
Yeah.
If you didn't die, if you were immortal, then any restriction of freedom would be terrible. It would be making your world smaller, right?
Yeah.
But your world already has a limit. You're not going to do everything.
Yeah.
And so that's what memento mori means. It actually means you are making choices every day, so you might as well make them, and you might as well make the right ones.
Yeah.
And so so it's actually a very mature and long view thing to say, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to decide. This made me really sad when I heard it one time. But a friend, they went hunting with their dad and they said, yeah, that's going to be our last hunting trip ever. And that made me really sad. It's like, wow, the last time you ever do something, right?
Yeah.
This is the last time I'm ever going to play Smash Bros. Melee. This is the last time. It's like, wow, but if you actually sit down and say, this is the last time I'm ever going to play Smash Bros. Melee, and that is going to allow me to get this car, let's say, for whatever weird reason. That's a very mature decision to make.
Yeah.
You're saying this might be the wrong decision, but I'm sticking with it. I'm going to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And so, this unbridled pursuit of freedom, it's not the best thing. And it tied in there somehow to the John Galt thing.
Is it that he should feel pain?
Right, that he's feeling pain. You're pretty good at that. I don't know how you keep track. No, it's not that he should feel pain. It's that
I was just wondering where you're going. So
no, he's content in his choice. He's made his choices.
Yeah.
That's what the lack of pain is. He's made his choices.
Yeah. No, but how do you draw that stupid expression on someone's face?
Yeah, shame I didn't show you that guy on YouTube earlier, hey? Because I think he pulls it off.
Yeah, it was very hard to do.
But it's this sort of, it's like, right, this is your eye, right? It's in front, right? and this is the pain in your life behind it, right?
Yeah.
The man without pain, the pain isn't gone, right? What happens instead is the pain in the eyes swap positions. The pain is in front of the eyes, not behind the eyes. And this is a line from No Limb Can Bear I have, where she's been suffering for a long time, and you can see the pain clearly in her eyes. And then she gets to this point where she snaps, and it says the pain moved behind her eyes, and she just sort of settled there.
Yeah.
And that's because there's a fresh pain, and then there's this dull pain that never leaves. And the man without pain, all pain is fresh.
Yeah.
Because you feel it, you experience it. You need to experience pain for it to stay fresh, and you don't want it to ever go behind your eyes. You need it to stay fresh. And to do that, it's terrifying, and you are going to make so many mistakes, and you are going to destroy your life. But that's the only way to do it, is you have to feel the pain.
You're going to destroy the world. In John Galt's case,
yeah,
he actually he destroys the world.
Yeah, I mean, what's the greater what's the greater pain and danger than that? Yeah,
that's why everyone's asking who is John Galt. Is like this weird thing, but it's like, who's John Galt? He's the guy who's destroying the world right now.
How's the start of his speech go? Who is John Galt, you ask? I am the man that has answered your question of, like, what if we got rid of all these bad things, and so I've given you the world you wanted, and I've let you live, and it's just the biggest I told you so.
Yes, no, that is his
the whole story is just I told you so.
That's 50% of the story. The other 50% is Ayn Rand's weird self-insert of her wanting to romance John Galt.
I think the audiobooks, his speech takes something like 6 hours or something. Like,
well, that's why you listen to the audiobook on 2x speed.
It's like, I don't think there's many people on Earth that could actually read that in one sitting. Or like if you're on a podium, you're just like, maybe I could.
It was the culmination of all of our ideas put into one story, into a sci-fi.
Have you read Fountainhead?
No, I haven't. I've heard that if you read Atlas Shrugged, you actually don't need to read her other books, because basically, like, it's the culmination of her essays, her stories, all of them put into one idea. And it's the most clear of any of it, and it's the best written of all of them.
XKCD, he has a funny take on it, because he's a fairly leftist type guy, right? But he was saying, I have this problem with Atlas Shrugged, or Ayn Rand in general, where I read her books, and I'm reading each sentence, and I'm going, yes, 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 this is amazing, yes, yes, for the first 90% of the sentence. And then the sentence ends with, therefore, be a giant dick to everyone. And I go, no!
But it's not be a giant dick to everyone. It's...
I remember...
So, Princess Bride. So, she's like, farm boy, get me that water. I was like, as you wish, and like takes down that whole romantic scene. And then she's like, die for me, whatever. And she throws him down a cliff, and he's like, as you wish.
Yeah.
Like, he is doing that for himself.
Have you heard...
Like, his as you wish is for him. Like, it... You could say it's kind of like a smarmy joke, but it's like, he's doing this because it pleases her, and that pleases him. And that's like the whole thing. Like, she hammers it too much on the nose in some points, but it's like, when the main character is making out with someone else. So the main character wakes up in this hotel, and Riordan's there, and he's made her breakfast. And she's eating, I'm like, oh, this is great. This is so kind of you. He's like, no, it's not. I did it completely for the pleasure on your face, so I could enjoy it.
Yeah, I have read some of her essays. We read them in philosophy class, and I think it was one literally about a plate of cookies or something, where she says, are you going to let everyone suffer about whether or not they should take the last cookie, or just take it if you want it? And at the time when I read it, I thought that sounded selfish. But looking back, it's like, no, you want it, and people are offering it to you, take it. There's this tradition in Japan, which I did not know about when I was in Japan, and I may have totally trashed it a couple times, which is funny, because Japan is even more passive-aggressive than... most places, but they have this tradition in Japan where you offer someone something and they refuse it, and then you offer it again and they refuse it again. And, like, you do this with like money and like food and everything, and so you can play this little game with the cookie, or you can just say, I want the cookie, and take it. And I'm actually looking back, like, did I do that in Japan? I'm kind of wondering if it happened. Like, hey, you want $20? Sure, but but. You know, might be Dante's, it might be Paradise Lost, but it's God's greatest curse is thy will be done.
Yeah.
And I think that's where objectivism might fail, because it's based on the idea that everything you perceive is real and all that there is, and that you know the sum of your
Yeah.
your reality. And but even then, I think it's just a very
90% of the time you can be objectivist.
well, I think it's a very clear way to go through the world.
Yeah.
And I think it's better than any alternative other than a very complicated, very difficult, probably religious-based one. And I would be much happier in a world where everyone was objectivist than whatever we have now, I think.
So would Ayn Rand.
Well, she came from the Soviet Union as well.
Yeah.
I think, like, that's one thing as well. Like, you cannot be harsh to her. She came from hell, and she was completely in reaction against it. And she saw, like, any tiniest slide of Americans towards this. She was like, no way.
Well, apparently as well, she was, like, of that very much, she did not tolerate fools, apparently. And you can probably get that from her book. But she very much lived by how she wrote her book. Like, so people, that's one of the reasons why people don't like Ayn Rand, actually, is she did not tolerate fools. And she could be wrong in her not toleration of fools. As you say, like, man, no pain, is going to make mistakes. But it's like, if you tried that Japanese, like, game with her, she would just take that from you, like, every single time.
And that's a much better way to live than to be in this confusing realm. So I think the confusing realm of Japan, the ideal, right, might be a better world in some sense. But I don't think it's one humans are mature enough to enter. That's not quite the idea. Like, that doesn't quite express it, but there is a... No, I take it back. Because, see, what you're doing with that is you are saying... It's heroism, right? You're saying, I can take on the pain of rejection so you don't have to. That's what the Japanese thing is saying. That's what all this kindness is saying, where you don't quite stay what you want. When you give other people an out, right? You're saying, I can take the pain of rejection upon me. So you're doing this kindness, right? Yeah. But what you're also doing is you're saying, I'm stronger than you. In some ways, right? Like, you can look at it either way. You can say, I'm stronger than you, or you can say, we can both handle this, but I will be the one to bear the burden this time. Yeah. Like, you go for dinner, and you say, I'll pay for it this time. Like, you could pay it for it next time, but I'm going to pay for it this time. I'm going to take the burden of rejection this time. But, so, you could interpret it as a heroic thing to I think, possibly, to say that the sort of back and forth, but it is definitely also, you are weaker than me, and I will not give you the chance to once everyone has had the chance to go through the flames and be forged in the fires of rejection, then you can live in that world. Yeah. But the problem is, if everyone is taking it on themselves, what you get instead is everyone's resentful and no one knows how to handle rejection.
I don't think I was as clued in as you for a lot trip where both me and you went to Japan. But for that really expensive dinner that we went to, like, the last day, did Dad end up paying for it?
No.
No, okay.
No, I don't.
Because he was uncertain if he could, basically, with the budget he had. And
yeah.
So that guy paid for him.
Yeah.
I can't remember his name. Tyson? No, not Tyson.
No. But yeah, no, he ended up paying for it. Yeah. And I think Dad did do the back and forth a little bit. He said, like, whoa, no, you can't do that. And he's like, yeah, no, it's fine. So I think they did that. But I think it would have actually been rude if he said, I'll pay for it, to say, oh, thanks. I think that would have actually been rude in Japan. Yeah. Even though the guy was rich and, yeah.
Richer than I realized at the time.
Oh, is he?
Well, for me, I put retrospect, because when he was in Whitehorse, he's like, I like to buy a ring from every place I visit.
Yeah. And he got a ring with a gold nugget. It
was a solid gold ring with a gold nugget in it. Yeah. And that's what he decided to buy. And, like, that, like, if that's a habit of traveling, like, that's a little eccentric. But also, like, he took us to all those places where he had connections. And a normal financier does not have connections like that.
Like the head of a strawberry plant and the head of a bean plant and the head of a doll factory.
Yeah, like, a normal financier does not have connections like that.
Yeah. Maybe he's like a mason. He's a Freemason and he's going to all his buddies.
He could just be because he's an accountant. But he could just be a very successful accountant.
He's a high-up Yakuza member. That's possible.
I mean, a high-up accountant could be a Yakuza member.
But he went to that pool, though.
Yeah.
He could have been undercover. No tattoos. Imagine a high-up Yakuza without tattoos. You're like this cool undercover dude. Yeah. So what you get with this back and forth, though, is, like I said, you get people that are all resentful. And people who can't deal with resentment because they've never... Sorry, people who are resentful and people who can't deal with rejection and disappointment because they've always had someone else taking it on for them. But the people taking it on So it's like, we'll rather live in a world where everyone's resentful than where everyone is hurt. But no, it's much better to live in the world where you hurt other people.
Yeah.
You should be able to say to the person, I'm taking your cookie. Or, oh, you're paying for my deal? My dinner? Sure. Go ahead. That hurts the other person slightly. But that is a better world because then they become stronger as well.
Yeah.
Because they feel the hurt. Now, what you should do if someone pays for your dinner is probably say thank you.
Yeah.
But at least. I've been thinking about this. Saying I'm sorry, saying thank you, right?
Yeah.
Maybe thank you is a bit different. I'm on edge about that one. Sorry as well. It's situational, right? But I think to give thanks and to apologize, you should do something other than describe the action of doing so. Like you're telling, not showing, right? Like,
So wait, should you kiss people's feet?
no. So when you no, not at all. No, that's wrong. That's still telling, not showing. Because I have this written down, crazily enough. We were taught how to apologize in elementary school.
I statement.
And you say, I'm sorry I did X. I won't do it again because of Y.
And if I do it again, you may take off my left hand with a scimitar.
I'm sorry for, next time I will. That's how it went, remember?
Yeah.
And what that was is you saying, I have recognized the behavior, and so the other person can decide if you actually have recognized the problem behavior or not.
Yeah.
And then you have said, I will alter my behavior. That is the most important part.
Yeah.
Right? And here's the thing. You don't even need to say this I statement. You can instead just do it. You can be like, okay, I messed up with that person. I'm going to be a better person. If they notice, they notice. If they don't, they don't. But I'm going to be a better person, right? Because if you just say to someone, sorry, oftentimes people that do that, I've noticed actually, they don't know what they're apologizing for. They just want you to like them again.
Yeah.
And when I say I've noticed people do that, I've noticed myself do that. I'll be like, oh, I'm sorry. It's like, I don't know what I did, but you're sad. So I don't want to deal with it. I'm sorry, right? So no. Did you do anything wrong? You might have not done anything wrong. They might be overreacting. They might be sad.
Yeah.
That might not be your responsibility whatsoever. Maybe you did something bad that you wouldn't change. You do it again.
Yeah.
Probably don't say sorry for that either. Maybe you can explain yourself, but really, like, are you trying to make yourself feel better or them at that point?
Just want to know an observation I had, which is when you raise your voice like that, like that whole thing, I had a moment where I had to stop my fist from connecting with your face.
Why?
There was something in that just made really annoyed me.
Wow. Okay. Well, screw you.
You're giving me an example of bad behavior, but just that sound of it.
What bad behavior was it? Apologizing?
On the I just want you to like me again. You raised your voice and went high pitched. And I don't know. I'm sorry. I just want you to like me again. That sort of thing.
Yes. Well, that's like abusive wording. That's very toxic. What do you call that? Yeah. Well, toxic is the word, but toxic has this new connotation. But that is evil, controlling language.
Yeah. So just the sound that the way you're speaking. That's what just for almost wanted to lash out against
people
that.
recognize that. People recognize when you're trying to control them. People recognize when you don't care about what you're saying, and you recognize this pathetic No, it's not even pathetic. It's mean groveling. Pathetic means you care about the person. Mean means you're small and worthless. It's mean groveling, and people don't like groveling at all.
Yeah.
Adam from Stitch and Adam has a rule. I think I might have talked about this before. Never apologize, and I didn't like it. But what it turns out, because he says, yeah, I should have done this better. What he's doing actually, he's saying he never apologizes, but what he's actually doing is he's adjusting his behavior if he thinks he does wrong, but he's not talking about it. And I think that's actually really admirable, because you can't even hide behind the veil of apologizing at that point. Yeah. You can't even try to control people by saying, oh, just go back to loving me, right? So what I was doing there, it's that's Cluster B in a nutshell, basically. There's a guy, he does role play videos on YouTube that are, I've only watched one or two because they're really disturbing to watch. He's really good. It's messed up. But that sort of leads us on to ghosting, which I was talking about with social media.
Yeah.
And so good gamer GG was saying, okay, so what's ghosting? What's the definition of ghosting? And he says, so what's the definition of ghosting? You know about ghosting?
Ghosting is where you're messaging someone and you're having a rapport, and then they just stop.
Yeah.
And then apparently there's something called zombieing, but I can't exactly remember what that is.
That's where you talk to the person after a couple months again, and you sort of get their hopes up again and sort of get them in this loop of controlling or whatever.
Okay.
But I think that one's a bit, well,
That sounds like love bombing to an extent.
Sort of, but it's also sometimes you're busy and then you want to, oh hey, I haven't talked to this person in a while. So
Captain Carrot, I love you. Why don't you say it anymore? Or say it once.
but with that zombieing thing, it's funny because that's another problem with social media is you're reading into it, right?
Yeah.
That's another thing. Good Gamer GG says is you should. He has a name, I forget it. You should, because his YouTube name's terrible. You should try to read the best thing you can into the message.
Yeah, like Key and Peele.
Yeah, exactly like that. But also, that's why it's a problem in the first place, I think, because I don't think you can read the best thing into that message. You can say you should do it. I don't think you can.
Yeah.
I really don't think you can. And this zombie thing, it could be, oh, I haven't talked. My phone broke and now I can talk to that person. Or, oh, Matt, yeah, no, we have a bit of a falling out. Maybe I'll reach out and see if we can patch it up. Right?
Yeah.
And so that can be very controlling. That can be a sort of narcissist love bombing, trying to get their thing back. They're bored of them and now they want them back.
Yeah.
Or that can just be a person innocently like, oh, I haven't talked to that person in a while. And so this ties into the ghosting definition. It says, okay, so ghosting is when they stop talking to you.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you send them a message, they take 2 seconds to reply. Is that ghosting? Well, obviously not, right?
Yeah.
Because they took. Okay, what if they take a day? It's like, well, they could have been sick or they could have busy and they reply after a day. He's like, okay, so at what point is it considered ghosting instead of taking a while to reply? So it's 1 day, 2 days, a week, a month, 2 months, a year? They said it's none of those. Ghosting is when. So the amount of time it takes to be ghosting is whatever you, the recipient, determine it to be.
The person getting the message and
the person who hasn't received a message.
Ah.
So you send a person a message.
Ah, yes.
It is now up to you to determine at what point they are ghosting you.
Right.
It is not to the other person to determine that. And I think that's really interesting because that means it's all in your head.
Yeah.
Because this is this asynchronous synchronous conversation where you have decided at some point I deserve for it to be a synchronous conversation.
Yeah.
And so at some point you've decided, no, this is ghosting, this is wrong. So that's totally up to you. I thought that was interesting. And that ties in somewhere, maybe it'll come back around. But if it doesn't, it'll come back like 3 weeks from now. But so what I've been noticing about social media is that I can use YouTube, okay. I can use small forums like Heroes Community, okay.
Yeah.
I can go onto them, I can post messages, I can be fine. And
well, I think forums are by mail, like.
Yeah, you don't expect a reply. It's
yeah.
Like you're posting a message and
forum is more so than you're pissing into the ocean. Someone might notice your piss.
Most forums, Reddit isn't like that way because Reddit has the nested conversations.
Yeah.
Which means the person's directly replying to you.
Yeah.
Whereas on a forum, or a YouTube comment,
yeah.
It's a straight line, which means that you're all just contributing to a great text. It's like you're writing the Torah, where everyone is just.
Well, there's the reply to the comment, but. In YouTube,
but only once.
Yeah.
So, but with like a forum, right?
Yeah.
It's like the Torah. You're all creating a text together, building upon each other's work. Whereas with Reddit, it's a bunch of tiny diverging conversations, which is actually the biggest argument against meta Reddit, I guess, because you're essentially drilling down the internet into a bunch of unreachable tunnels or routes instead of it all being in a pillar of. Everyone has built upon the last person's knowledge. Yeah. And a person that was never replied to and didn't reply to anyone still is contributing to the conversation as a whole.
Yeah.
Whereas on Reddit, they're at the bottom and nobody reads their comment because they got 1 point or 0 points or something. So forums work. And I've noticed that people can contact me and expect me to reply. Oh, sorry. No, they don't do that, right? Because it's this giant pillar.
Yeah.
Whereas Reddit, there is a bit of a conversation going on. So if people can contact me and expect me to reply, then I have that burden of what I imagine to be another person's expectations, whether or not they have them, right? Yeah. That's when social media is destructive to me. And that ties into the other destructive stuff I've talked about, right? Mm-hmm. Making you borderline, making you not plan for things, and reading into everything, like reading into ghosting, that sort of thing. But for me, the problem is when I think other people are expecting a reply, which is why I don't like it. Someone sends me a message like, hey, do you want to hang out? And it's like, oh no, if I got to reply to them now and I got to do this, because if I don't reply to them, then I'm a bad person. And so that's horrible and it feels bad. So that's when it doesn't work for me. So, and the other time it doesn't work for me is when I send someone a message and they don't reply to me. They ghost me, or they're verging on ghosting me, right? And I really want to reply, so I'm doing everything I can because they just stood up and walked away from our conversation.
Yeah.
Or they ignored me completely because I was talking to them and they never even said something.
Yeah.
But, like, if you send someone a Twitter message out of the blue, right, that you've never talked to before, then they have no reason to talk to you. But to you, it feels like, hey, I was sitting down with you and I talked to you and you never replied to me. Like, what a jerk. This person didn't. And that's what it feels like. So that's another time I don't like it. So basically, when others expect stuff from me or when I expect stuff from them, that's when I don't like social media.
Yeah.
And so I think the solution is to differentiate asynchronous and synchronous media. They can't be this weird hybrid. It has to be one or the other.
Yeah.
So what do? Well, you make messages self-destruct after a minute or every 15 minutes. So the person has to be sitting at the computer talking to you in order for that conversation to continue. Once they get up and leave, the conversation is over. You can start a new conversation in an hour or tomorrow or in a month, but that conversation has ended instead of a conversation taking 3 years like it does on Facebook all the time.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've had those conversations where it's just this continuous sort of evolving conversation that lasts for years, although you use social media a bit less, but it's that sort of, you're sending these messages back and forth, or maybe you're just even keeping alive with just some stickers and memes and whatnot, and it's just this back and forth of nothing for years, decades at this point, if you started with MySpace or something maybe. So the person should have to be sitting at their computer with the right tab open to talk to you, and phone calls shouldn't leave messages. Because you leave a message and now it's like, oh, you got to reply to this person because there's this message. Remember when we'd always come home, check the messages on the phone?
Yeah.
Because your life centers around the phone. You've got this thing that's your central point. So now, this isn't what I'm saying. Keep in mind, this is how you fix social media. This isn't what I'm saying is, I don't know. These aren't my prescriptions from on high. This is more, if you want social media, I think people can adapt and do these things in a at least moderately healthy way without any changes.
Yeah.
Or not without any changes, but they need, like you said, you're going to stop thinking about it as something. You're going to stop thinking about it as a running conversation.
Yeah.
You're going to think about it as email or mail.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that could help without changing anything else about the media, right? But I think, so this is how you have a video game, and it doesn't quite work. You can tell the players how to play your game properly, or you can tweak the game so that players are heavily encouraged or forced to play the game right?
Yeah.
So what I'm saying right now is I said before, so my first part of this episode was me saying how to how to tell the player how to play the game, and the second part is me saying how to tweak the game so that you can't play wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, so phones, no voice messages. They just maybe they can do that thing that some phones do where you phone, you miss the call, you can start talking, and if anyone's around they can hear you, and then they can pick up the phone if they want to or not.
Yeah.
So maybe you have that, but you no voice messages. You have to, and this is behavior again you have to use it only for contacting people, not viewing each other's profiles. You need to use it to arrange events, not to share events or life updates. You need to go and actually have events, meet up with people, be social, ironically, given that it's social media.
Yeah.
So it should only be used to organize events, not to have conversations, not to do that.
These things that you're describing sound very uneconomical. It's not going to make the companies money.
Why not?
Well, like the social media not having all this picture on, then you can't fit the ads in there.
Right, yeah, I guess there's that, yeah.
But to make everything paid for by subscription or something.
IRC protocol still exists. You can still set up servers and whatnot there. So these other things exist. We don't need Facebook and Reddit. And Reddit might actually die in the next...
Have you seen the chart?
No.
There's a chart which shows every single Reddit that's dark right now. And it goes by popularity size.
Yeah.
And like 98% of the very popular ones are dark.
Well, the question will be, Louis Rossman talked about this, and I think he's right. But not entirely right, but I do think he's mostly right. A lot of people are saying they're going to do it for 2 days. Yeah. And I don't think that will do anything. Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm losing my voice. That's a first. I'm losing my voice without pain. Woohoo! 3 more hours.
You've gone for longer than that. You've gone for 5 hours.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, like right now I could go for 3 hours. No, I'm still recovering. My voice is not fully recovered at all yet. But like I couldn't do a recording yesterday, it turned out. But if people only stay black for 2 days, then Reddit will hear, oh, so people only will be with us for 363 days of the year if we do something that they don't like.
Yeah.
363 days of the year. That's not much of a loss to them. They're losing like 1%, slightly less than 1% of their revenue, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of Reddits are saying we're going to stay black until they change their API requirements.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way to do it. And the question will be, will enough people actually do that? Now, for me personally, I don't know about the finances of Reddit because a lot of these social media companies are actually running massive deficits, and Reddit might just be trying to balance out. I don't know, because they're basically saying, hey, stop scraping our website. We're going to charge you for that, because they're getting we're going to charge you a lot for that. Like, it would cost the Apollo app like $20 million a year. But I can sort of sympathize with, like, hey, we can't actually afford to keep the site running. Like, people say, we need a new YouTube, but nobody ever makes one. Why is that? I would make a new YouTube if I knew how. That's because nobody knows how. It's impossible. Even YouTube can't do it.
Yeah.
It's a giant money pit. Twitter was losing billions until Elon Musk came along. And they're still in the massive red, but they're actually making money now, I think.
Yeah, they are making money.
But you can't... These things have been propped up by investors for a decade, and none of them make money. Like, well, Facebook does, I think, possibly. But it might not actually be possible for Reddit to not implement these changes. Yeah. And then, on the other hand, this one's kind of selfish, but I don't like what Reddit has done to the internet. I like forums. Mm-hmm. I like going to little niche forums for this thing and that thing and that thing and this thing. And Reddit has... First of all, Reddit has amalgamated everyone in one place.
Yeah.
Their mods are awful. Their admins are awful. They're horrible people. And all the people on Reddit are horrible people.
Yeah.
I put up a post on the Dresden subreddit where I said, this series, of any series out there, would benefit from a rewrite so much. Like, you combine the last two books into one coherent book like he originally wanted. You get the order right. You can focus a bit more on the breaking Thomas out of prison angle. You can focus more on his relationship with Murphy, which I felt was skated over a bit. And then Full Moon, you can do a full rewrite because that thing's a horrible garbage mess. Yeah. Bloodright, you can introduce Kim into Bloodright because Dresden's first apprentice. Yeah. Because she just appears out of nowhere in the second book, and it's like, why not? If you have the advantage, why not put her in the first? And Full Moon, you can make Murphy not responsible for everything going wrong. You can make her still hate Dresden, but you can make her an honest mistake rather than just her being the entire plot of Full Moon would not happen if at every point, every single character wasn't making the worst possible decision. Yeah. It's a horrible book. The plot is horrible. The action minute to minute's fun, but it's horribly written, and Murphy looks like a monster in it, and it's awful. So change that. And then just a few, like, the last books should also be rewritten to fix the Winter Mantle should be made a bit more consistent, because when he first gets it, it's like, you have superpowers now. And then in Battlegrounds, it's like, it's a painkiller and that's it.
Yeah.
It's like, what is it? Come on. And also the first book is super magical. He's like, science is the greatest religion of the 21st century. Yeah. And then by the time you get to Battlegrounds, he's like, magic has to follow the laws of thermodynamics. Choose one.
Yeah.
Preferably choose the science as a religion one, but still choose one.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of inconsistency. And the last two books, he had a 6-year break where his life was hell. Mm. He wasn't up to speed until about halfway through Battlegrounds, it felt like. Yeah. Like once Battlegrounds gets going, you're like, yeah, this is Dresden. But there's this weird gap where, like, peace talks and whatnot, I was like, I don't really like this. No. And so I just want him, now that he's back on form, rewrite it. And I thought, this is a fun thing to discuss. Like, I'm not saying, Jim Butcher, get down here and rewrite this. I'm just like, hey, this is something I want to... These people all like Dresden. I like Dresden. Let's talk to these people. I think I got 50 downvotes, and... like,
only
people
50.
And people were saying, like, I got an award, which is like the Clown Award or something, and I got people saying,
I've never gotten a Clown Award, but I've gotten
I got people saying, like, well, you should have put this on unpopular opinion, and why would you think something so stupid? If you hate the series so much, why are you reading it? I just tons and tons of people saying, no, I disagree with you completely. Every word in there is golden and perfectly written. Then the top comment was actually a guy saying, I completely disagree with you. You're totally able to have your own opinion. But I think that the last 4 paragraphs of Bloodright are some of the best stuff, was some of the best writing he ever did. And I agree, where he's like, my name is Harry Dresden, conjured by my name at right when things go bump in the night. That thing? I think that was great. That was really well done. So yeah, keep that. I'm not saying... And I think what happened... Well, what's crazy, actually, there's 2 things that happened, right? Yeah. First of all, I'm a writer. Rewrite to me, because I'm a writer and I know how lazy we are, means you tweak a couple words here and there and boom, you've got a new story.
Yeah.
Where these people might think he has to sit down at the typewriter and start from book one
Yeah.
and redo the series. That's not what it... Because someone said he doesn't have enough time to rewrite the series. He has to finish the series. It's like, no. Rewriting doesn't take much work. And editing and writing take two completely different parts of your brain. Yeah. You can be exhausted from writing and you can edit all day. You can be exhausted from editing and write all day. They're two completely different skill sets. Secondly, I had a comment where a guy said something. He's like, wow, this is terrible opinion. I replied to him and said, no, I love it. I love the series. I love the story. And I replied to him. And that got downvoted massively, like 10 downvotes. Yeah. The next person that replied said, he probably just loves the series and has a few criticisms. He got upvoted massively. So I think it might be slightly random. And I think what happens is if you have negative points, people downvote you. If you have positive points, people upvote you. Because I have seen identical posts in the same thread have opposite...
Yeah.
So I think Reddit is... when I go to Heroes Community and I say, Fire Magic sucks, Learning sucks, First Aid sucks, Eagle Eye sucks, and I think that they were really lazy with Gretchen's model, and I think that they shouldn't have female barbarians look like topless males, and the orc is missing half his head, and the hydra is missing half its head, and I think that the boots of polarity are completely underpowered.
Then you'll get the reply, the Yellow King sits in the nest of the Grey Serpent.
And then after...
I like cheese. And after you read past Ghost...
After you read past Ghost, people are like, yeah, you're right, or no, you're wrong because X, Y, and Z. But nobody's saying, wow, you're so stupid. Everyone's there because they love it.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, yeah, no, you're right. Learning sucks. And we all love this game together. And so we're going to talk about how much it's... This is the thing I never get about people devoting their lives to hating Trump, right? Were you going to vote for the Republicans? Do you really need to fix Trump? Like, why don't you work on fixing your own party so they beat Trump? Which they kind of did, so good for them. But it's like, you should criticize most the things you understand and the things you care about, right? The things that you're like, hey, this could... You should... Now, that sounds a lot like you should, like, you should, like, because there's this problem where people are more willing to hurt their loved ones, right? And I don't think that's good. But I think hurting someone out of pettiness is different from saying, hey, you should comb your hair. It would look good. No, your hair looks really straight right now, actually. Like, that's ridiculous.
It's not straight, but I blow-dried it.
Are you kidding?
My hair could be way straighter than this if I bought a comb. It is so tangled right now. There's so many knots in it. Like, my goodness, my hair is not straight at the moment.
If I filled my hair with gel and used a fine-tooth comb, I could not get it that straight. Like, I had a hairdresser use gel on my hair once, and it sprung up.
It rebelled. Your gel cannot maintain my might.
Your hair is so straight compared to mine.
I know.
So this Reddit protest, maybe I shouldn't comment on just because I'm really loving this new age of boycotts with Target and Budweiser and even Hogwarts Legacy was weird because it wasn't directly related to the company, and it failed horribly. Yeah. It didn't work. But I still like the idea that finally customers are saying, no, you have to treat us with respect or we're not going to buy your product. Because, like, look at the EA Sports lines. It's the same game made slightly worse every year. Yeah. It's like people need to stand up and say enough is enough. They need to have a bit of self-respect, and finally they are.
No, I do want Reddit to die, kind of.
Budweiser, I don't think Budweiser's initial collaboration with Dylan Mulvaney did anything wrong, really.
It was the person saying
our customers are fratty. Yeah. That was very wrong. It's like the whole we hate our customers, like Gillette tried that. Yeah. Like Gillette should have died for that. Like the fact that Gillette's still a company, I think that they should have died for that. Yeah. And like I've never bought anything Gillette since then. That might have been was that the push I got my razor for even? I'm not even sure. My safety razor. Although Gillette invented the safety razor, so kind of. But I'm really liking seeing these companies actually have to stand up against like their customers. Twitch? Well, Twitch said you can't have sponsorships in the video, and then they quickly backpedaled on that.
They still haven't backpedaled, though, on the $15 for leaving.
For leaving?
It's worse than the sponsors. The more egregious thing than the sponsors for Twitch is that if you ever leave the service, so you're like, I'm done, they'll charge you $15. Or if like
How?
so if you've earned 50, well, that's people are asking how. So it's like thought if you've earned $50, they'll take it out of the earning. If you ever get a strike, they'll charge you $15. If you like ever get a ban, you'll charge you $15.
See, that's the reason I don't have PayPal anymore. I thought PayPal was an amazing service when I signed up for it. That's how these companies get into position, right? They make the most amazing service and then they make it evil. The reason I don't have PayPal anymore is because of their $2,500 fine if you go against what they want you to, right? And look, their list was fairly good list. I don't like the hate speech in that list, but everything else is like, yeah, you don't want you don't want your people scamming their customers. You don't, right? Those are bad things. There should be punishments for people doing that to PayPal or PayPal's customers, right? Like PayPal should be able to enforce some sort of punishment, right? But the fact that they are the arbiters of taking my money for my transgressions means that they are incentivized, no matter how pure, to come up with arbitrary reasons for like Twitch can just start giving me Twitch is like, we had a bad quarter, let's start handing out strikes.
Well, my friend who's trained to be a doctor, I want to ask him this question about doctors, because it's like the drain of doctors like going through this location. So you obviously want someone who's highly skilled and motivated, and there's the whole problem with communism, which is like, well, my effort doesn't get me paid because we're all paid the same.
Yeah.
So basically, I want to ask him, what's the level between apathy and effort for you as a doctor, like, or apathy and earnings for doctors?
Right, like how much would he need to be paid to be motivated, or?
Yeah, but it's like also like there's the whole problem with the pharmaceuticals. Like you want people to be sick so you can pump them full of things so you can give them money.
Well, I think there's always more sick people than doctors. It seems like, right?
Yeah, but like apparently in the United States, I didn't know this, but it's like the most medicated society on Earth, like country on Earth, and something like this is just the average, but every adult in the United States is on 3 medications.
Yeah, I think they use something like a third or half of the world's medication in the States. It's something like that. Yeah.
And
so,
well, one thing I heard Europeans say is that's partly because their food's also way more unhealthy than anywhere else.
Yeah, and they have like unhealthy diets and whatnot because they were taught wrong a lot of times. Like they have their food pyramid. We have the food pyramid here too, until recently. Yeah. And they have their government cheese and their massive dairy industry influence, which we have here as well, and the seed oil massive industry influence. They have several large industries that just are paying the government to poison their people.
Yeah.
And that's pretty bad. Especially, I find the seed oil one, like, I don't know how bad it is for you actually, but the fact that we're just putting rancid fat in everything because it's easier than dumping it basically is like, it's like, is that really what we want to be doing?
Yeah.
That doesn't seem like you're improving people's lives at the very least. And the cereal industry as well. I think Jordan Peterson did an interview recently with a guy talking about the cereal industry, how they were able to come up with a solution they're like, we want something that is cheap, that is filling, has a ton of calories, tastes great. And well, cereal does that. And so we'll just give everyone cereal, but cereal is, it's got all sorts of, nutritional deficits and potential allergens and I think there's something with pesticides as well that we haven't explored fully, where pesticides are on everything, and so we might think we're allergic to wheat when we're actually allergic to pesticides. And so, there's this. So with your friend, you're asking, would you hate having a world where everyone was healthy because then you'd be out of work? So the rape whistle paradox?
It's not that. It's not that. It's more of like it's to avoid because in a communist system, no one's going to go above and beyond because it's not worth their while. Right.
So, are you asking if there was communism, would you still be a doctor?
No, I'm more like, what's the level of, because like the United States, they pay way too much for their doctors.
Right.
And like medicine's too expensive there. So I was just curious, like in his mind, what's the level between like, basically are you actually worth so you're not apathetic? Like what are doctors actually worth? And you'd be satisfied to work for that amount.
So what's the minimum amount of money you would work for?
Yeah.
And what does that question tell you?
I just want to know his thoughts on, because he's trained to be a doctor, like what makes it so it's still worthwhile to be a doctor? Because the goal is to help people, but we should pay our doctors.
So is the question, why are you a doctor despite the low pay?
I think the question is, what's the worth of a doctor?
Like monetary worth?
Yeah. I don't know. It seemed better in my head when I was thinking about it.
Well, that's why you got to say it out loud, and then you can figure it out and get your core question.
Yeah, I'm going to say I don't know anymore. It's giving me more to think about, though. What's the price of a mile?
Well, this is horribly written, but I see whatever. Okay, so social media shouldn't be called social media. It should be called help you socialize outside media. Which is to say that it should be used to... social media should facilitate socialization.
Yeah.
Social media should facilitate socialization. But the socialization should not be done within the medium itself.
Yeah.
So
I was just thinking of experimenting with YouTube, of returning back to the original purpose of YouTube and attempting
dating app?
Yeah.
Now that'd
just as like a little joke.
You could just make a video.
Yeah, no, that's what I said. It's like that. I think that could be a fun video.
So that's like making taking the bus to college, for example, the main event. Like the bus to college is meant to facilitate it, right?
Yeah.
But instead, you're studying on the bus, or you're just trying to spend as much time on the bus. It's the finger instead of the moon, again, right? Social media has become the finger instead of the moon. We're devoting our lives to the finger when we should be looking at the moon. We're devoting our lives to socializing on the platform instead of using the platform to socialize. So, email, another problem, because it's also instantaneous, despite the fact that we see it more as equivalent to mail, but it's not. Yeah. It's also instantaneous. You get emails from your boss, they expect a reply back. Europe recently made it, or was it Sweden? Somewhere in Europe, or Europe itself, made it illegal for an employer to contact you outside of work hours, which I think is a great law.
Yeah.
But I also think that you don't need a regulation for everything, Europe. I mean, geez, sometimes you can just be a good person.
Nine? These will regulate everything, and we will be happy with it, and it shall run like clockwork.
I like a lot of the European Union's laws, like their privacy laws and whatnot, but at the same time, it's like, do you actually need to set in stone all these things? It's like their solution to everything is to restrict everyone's freedom.
Else they return to the rectangle.
So, how do you fix email? Well, mail kind of works. People still feel burdened by it, but there's an expectation that, people won't always receive your mail. There's this expectation that
it can take time.
It can take time, or it might get lost, or people sit on it. So, mail should take 66 piercing. So if you roll a 6, you roll again. Days to deliver all mail, all email. So you click on send email, and then a die is rolled, and it takes that long to send. And I think occasionally it should just delete your email instead. I'm less certain on that one, but I think that could help. Because then there's always a chance that your email was deleted by the system.
There's a Studio C sketch where Matt is an inventor. And so he is like inventing all these things, and the executive's son comes into his workshop, and it's Gray. I can't remember the guy's first name, but he's in there, and he's the executive's son. And so he's showing him all his inventions, and the son's making them all terrible. So it's like, here's an alarm clock. It will wake you up with beautiful Beethoven. No, it will scream at you. Wake up, wake up, wake up. And it's just like a whole bunch of things. Like, he has like this wonderful invention, and then the son just adds something terrible to it. And it's all real world inventions.
But I think there's
I'm just saying, like, there's utility versus humanity is what we're
right. But I think and I'm arguing for humanity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because there's a thing. You ever want to hate a song? Set your alarm to your favorite song.
Yeah.
But or your favorite song to your phone ringtone.
Yeah.
I kept getting bad news whenever I heard my ringtone, and it's one of my favorite songs, and I was like, wow, this song just makes me feel dread now. So that didn't work. Yeah. So
I should really change my ringtone because it's Bobby Yatu. And it starts at the start of the song, and the start of Bobby Yatu is this deep reverberating warble. And so I'm like those birds that can't figure out where their mate's calling from. So my phone will start ringing. I'll go, first, like, for the first 5 seconds of it ringing, I'll go, wait, is my phone ringing?
So that's another thing, right? If someone is going on a walk with you, or they're talking with you, or you're having dinner, even sometimes.
Your phone should have proximity sensors, and if there's someone near you, they disable.
Well, if your phone, even if you're alone and you're reading, or you're playing D&D by yourself.
You have a chip in your brain which figures out what you're...
and your phone rings, right?
Yeah.
You say, I'm going to prioritize this call over the person I'm with, over the thing I'm doing. This call is more important than anything else in my life. That's messed up. Like, you should be... people always talk about you should be in the present, you should be in the moment, and then they say, hey, one moment, got a call here. Like, no, you're talking to me right now.
Should we return back to the operator? Phone call from Mr. Smith. I can't take it right now. Right click.
That could help. I have a even...
Well, a devious plan.
Sort of, yeah. But maybe even then, like, you shouldn't be... If the phone rings, you shouldn't be picking it up. Right? That's the thing that the phone can't handle. That's on your end. That's a personal thing, right? You're doing something. You should be doing that thing, not picking up the phone.
Mm.
And that makes it tricky because basically the phone should be a way to contact someone who's expecting to be contacted.
So you press a button that's like, the green light on Steam, which says I'm available. You press that on your phone. And then your number lights up.
Yes. But then people are just going to be holding the button down. But maybe that extra step is enough, right?
Mm.
And you have to be holding the button down. You can't just switch modes. Because on Steam, people always leave it on I'm online or I'm offline, right? But if you have to hold it down. Because I don't like that on Steam. I always have mine set to I'm offline. Because people will contact me on Steam and I don't like it. It's like, I'm playing a game. I'm not playing with you. Leave me alone. So, like, it's very antisocial to take phone calls and receive messages, actually. Because you are not doing the thing you are doing.
Yeah.
So, what you should do in this case, I think, is we do have something that kind of works pretty good for this already. And it's not a perfect solution, but walkie-talkies.
Mm.
Not walkie-talkies exactly because they're short range, but you can have... Nokia used to have cell-based walkie-talkie mode for their cell phones, where you could press a button and you could talk into it for other people that had your cell phone, or people on your list.
Mm.
And I think that would be a great thing to bring back. Or even through the internet. You could have walkie-talkies through the internet. Or...
the local line, which is you pick up the phone and you can talk on it.
Yeah. Yeah, you... Actually... No, that's perfect. You have party lines again. But you have a party line where you can't call anyone. Nobody has alarms on their phone. At all.
Yeah.
What you have is you have an object in your house that if you pick up, you can go to the town square and everyone's talking. And you can say, hey, is John here? Oh, John is here. Hey, cool. Hey, John, I was wondering if you want to come to a barbecue on Saturday. And then the person's like, why aren't you inviting me to the barbecue? And you're like, shut up. This technology isn't work. You're just a figment of my imagination for this sketch. Go away.
Shut up, Steve. No one likes you. You smell funny.
You're not invited to the barbecue because we don't like you. But that's another thing, actually, is GG Gamer was talking about this. The reason so many people don't have friends is because they don't know how to have friends. And the reason they don't know how to have friends is because nobody taught them how to have friends. Because their parents didn't know how to make friends. Their parents just had friends. Because they didn't have social media. So instead, they always went to the barbecues and the potlucks. And everyone just went. He said, did your parents ever tell you, or did you ever do, when you go to a friend's birthday party, you pick out a gift for them, you, not your parent, and you hand the gift, even if your parent buys it, and you hand the gift to your friend, and your friend takes it from you and says thank you to you. The parents aren't involved. And when you leave the party, did the host of the party give you a goodie bag and say thank you for coming? And the host of the party is the kid, not the parent.
Yeah.
And did you get invited to barbecues where everyone comes along? And it's the neighborhood. It's not just your friend or your close friends. It's everyone. And you keep maintaining these ties, and you're aware that you have to build these ties up over time, and you're all in it together in a small community. You have to build a community. It takes work. You have to build friendships. It takes work. And you have to do these little things. And you can't just go to a friend's birthday and say, hey, how's it going? All right, bye.
See, I try to go to these community things. I look for them, like events to go to, and they're all full of geezers.
Yeah, because they're
I'm making friends with a lot of geezers.
Because they're the only people keeping it alive.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's something that we need to try to continue at some point, I think. And so he was talking about that. But yeah, so even if whatever his name was, Ethan or whatever, who you hate, on the phone.
Yeah.
Maybe you do invite him to the barbecue anyways. I don't know. I'm not sure about that. But maybe the barbecue should have everyone.
Yeah.
And maybe even the people you don't quite like. But it's like, well, he's the grumpy guy at the party, but you got to have the grumpy guy in the corner. Otherwise, it's not a party.
Yeah.
Like the barbecue we used to go to every year, we had this big fire for solstice, and we'd go to this old guy's place, and there was all sorts of people there. Tons of kids, tons of ancient old people like him. There was the people that took care of him. There was their family. Like it was like 4 generations of people.
Yeah.
And all just sort of intermingling to the point where there's people that are like, 15 years older than me, and I see them in the streets occasionally, and I'm like, oh, hey, how's it going? Because I knew you from then.
Yeah.
I would never spend time with you. We're completely different ages, completely different stages of life, but you're this person I know because we had a community for a while, and that community has ended over the years. I've noticed.
Yeah.
These things don't happen. Like after the old guy died, actually, basically.
His funeral was the last one.
Yeah, it just sort of it stopped being the thing that we did.
It wasn't the solstice; it was his birthday party.
Yeah, his birthday's in like July or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, and these things stopped happening. And
I had another friend though that her birthday was oddly placed, and so she would have solstice parties.
Yeah, and person across from her, my best friend, his mom would always have big parties too, and she still has them to an extent. But it's also lessened as she's gotten older, and most of the people she would invite have drifted around. But they still do big family dinners, so there's that. But yeah, you need to keep having these community things. So maybe the community, like maybe you could have, like you said, an operator, right?
Yeah.
But you just pick up the phone line and you say, you go to this, you have channels, so you switch to channel 3 and you say, hey John, you there? Yeah. Oh, Frank's here too. Okay, switch to channel 2. And you go, okay, hey, I want to invite you to the party. Like you could do something like that, and you say, well, why not just have a direct channel to his place? But then there's no one there half the time. You're like, hey, because then what you do is you gather yourself, right? You say, okay, I'm going to see if John or Frank or Bill is there when you pick up the phone. Yeah. So it doesn't matter that you quite get the right person. Another thing you could do is you could have a spot, the waiting spot or something between your houses where you guys just go and hang out. If you're looking to hang out, you go to the hangout spot for an hour and see if anyone wanders by. Yeah. You could have something like that. So yeah, the party line, walkie-talkies. I was thinking a great thing might be walkie-talkies that aren't in your house, but like you have a walkie-talkie, say 200 feet from your house that you don't use, your friend uses to transmit to your house. So like, hey, I'm outside. You free right now? And remember, walkie-talkies, they're two-way, so you have to turn them on to get a signal. So you're like, I'm busy right now, turn the walkie-talkie off. Or it's like, if anyone stops by, they can call me on the walkie-talkie. And maybe 200 feet's too close, but it's like, hey, I'm driving by 5 kilometers out. You interested? Like, you could have the walkie-talkie station. Like, those little book stations? Take a book, leave a book? Yeah. You have a walkie-talkie station.
Mm-hmm. Then you can figure out if your friend's doing all right.
Yeah. So you could have a little walkie-talkie station.
Oh, that sketch.
Oh, yeah, that's yeah.
All right.
So then there was something else, but I don't remember. So finally, we've got going back to Reddit, right? They're this left-wing hellhole.
Yep.
And not good left-wing, like they're like insane socialist and worse and everything else. And
they're commies.
This massive echo chamber, and there's also this issue everywhere and the places that aren't often have these intense right-wing concentrations. And there's this problem with social media, of the social media pipeline, and stuff getting shoved in your face you don't want to see, and addiction, and this constantly trying to give you, like, keep giving you the next thing, make you angry, make you engaged, make you mindless, make you engaged, all that sort of thing.
Don't question and consume next product.
Yeah. So what do you do for that? Because I've given the solution for communication, and I've given the solution for email. So I've given synchronous communication and asynchronous communication. But what about the information sharing portion of social media? Yeah. YouTube. Well, maybe that shouldn't be media in the first. Maybe that shouldn't be social anymore. But what you can do, at least for something like Twitter or YouTube,
just have a search function and nothing else.
Or Reddit. Not quite. Is you can allow them to have an algorithm, but the algorithm is determined by the user.
Yeah.
So Reddit, you can no longer downvote someone into oblivion. You say, I want to see I want to see the threads that have the most replies on them.
Yeah.
I don't care about votes. Or you say, I want to see the one that has the most upvotes, because that's probably the most useful for this washing machine fix.
Yeah.
Because sometimes upvotes and downvotes are very useful. Like if you see a downvote on a washing machine fixing video, you're like, okay, I'm not going to try it. I'm not going to fix my video this way.
That was the nice thing about Quora, is you would find the best answer by community or committee, or what people thought was the best answer by committee.
Oh, Quora? Yeah. Quora, they're just a nightmare because they don't let you read anything on them.
I know.
Sign in.
Quora has a lot of other problems, but
yeah, and they do this weird thing where they keep the title but they delete the question.
Sometimes they also put a similar question's answer down below, and they have to go searching past. It's a mess of a site.
And they're not even related half the time.
Quora didn't used to look like that, though, to be fair.
Yeah. But no, I think I really like the old, simple forums, like Heroes Community and others. You get what you want. The people there. Now the problem with what I noticed with Heroes Community, it's like, but the problem with Heroes Community is you don't just organically discover stuff. Everyone is there with a purpose, and you talk with a purpose, and you don't just get to scroll through an endless feed and wait a minute, maybe that's a good thing. Because I was thinking about it, I was like, yeah, you don't have this discovery thing on there, right? Everyone has a very specific point, and everyone's making a very specific point, and people come there and they say their thing and they move.
I press Control F and type in Ghost.
Yeah, you're going there for Ghost. You have a very specific point. Whereas on Reddit, you can read forever. You can scroll forever. And it's not even that. That could be fine on its own. While there's infinite information on Heroes of Might and Magic, great, I'm going to read. Maybe that's fine. But the issue with Reddit is you start on Heroes of Might and Magic, and then it says, well, why don't you check out... you like Heroes of Might and Magic? Why don't you check out Age of Wonders? Why don't you check out Civilization? Why don't you... Oh, you like strategy games? Why don't you check out Paradox games?
You can actually disable that in Reddit, but it's really annoying to do.
I have old Reddit, so it doesn't even do recommendations.
I found my settings to make it so it does that, so it doesn't recommend to me, but still.
I don't have a Reddit account. I just create a new account to post a comment and then delete the account.
And so you have it deleted.
Well, so here's the thing. I think you should do this too, actually. Reddit doesn't require an email to sign up. When you say create an account and it shows the email, you just press next and it takes you past it. And so you can make a new account for every post.
Okay.
And I find what it does is it prevents you from getting too invested in the site. It's quite useful. And you're not invested in your account. You're not caring about...
But my karma.
Yeah, that one... Well, the thing... I never understood karma, right? I was like, I don't care what my karma is. Until my first post got 50 downvotes or whatever it was. And did you know that Reddit severely limits your account if your karma's negative?
No, I did not.
You're only allowed to post every 15 minutes, and you're not allowed to post on like half the subreddits.
I didn't know that because I got a positive high karma.
Yeah, no, I got very... and it's incredible. You know, annoying passive-aggressive elementary school teachers?
Yeah.
It's like that. So you try to type when your karma's negative, and it lets you type out the whole message and press enter, and then everything flashes red. This red message pops up. It says, it looks like you've been trying to do that a lot lately. Why don't you take a break instead? It's the most passive... Like, why don't they just say, the moment you click reply, why doesn't it say, sorry, your account is limited due to low karma. I'll come back in 15 minutes. Why doesn't it tell... It's so passive-aggressive. It's horrible. I hate it so much.
Yeah.
YouTube does as well. I've been banned on YouTube a couple times now. And
Really?
Yeah, so I don't know if you know on streams, but people that are mods for the stream and can like ban you, they have wrenches, right?
Yeah.
So I started a chant of all wrenches are bastards. And...
You still got banned from that channel?
Yeah. Well, just timed out. But I was just having fun. They were just having fun. But it doesn't actually tell you if they time you out. What happens is next time you type, it's grayed out after you press enter, and it says you can't post. So it doesn't actually tell you've been banned unless you do something that would make you notice you've been banned. Basically, it doesn't say this mod has timed you out or something. No, me and the guy that timed me out were having fun. But it doesn't actually tell you. It's kind of that's the thing as well. I've noticed actually live streaming. A lot of people like live streaming. I don't really like watching live stream in a way, but what I've noticed is replying to a live stream, like typing and talking with people in a chat of a live stream, feels totally fine. Normally social media makes me feel awful. That makes me feel totally fine. And I think it's because it's synchronous. Yeah. You can't be asynchronous because...
It scrolls away.
Yeah, it scrolls away. Time passes. And even the people that you're replying to, they're seeing your stuff. You can't send something and then someone replies to it half an hour later. They have... the bigger the chat, the better. Yeah. If it's flying by, they have like half a second to read you. And so yeah, I think that proves that the asynchronous synchronous thing is an issue. Yeah. And yeah, everyone should have their own social media algorithm. And that's how you slightly fix social media. It's a lot of self control and
self-limitation.
Yeah, not control. You can't control yourself. As we said on the previous podcast, you can't control yourself really. But yeah, it's a lot of knowing yourself, and it's a lot of you can control yourself. You can't resist. You will eventually wear yourself out in most instances if you're running off of willpower to resist something. Like, for example, you can say, oh, I controlled myself with cigarettes. I stopped smoking cigarettes. Yeah, but you didn't keep buying them and putting them in your house, right? You got rid of the cigarettes from your house. Yeah. Yeah. Flee from temptation.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Jesus or someone said, right? Like, it's like resisting temptation. You can't walk into the brothel and sit there like, I will not fall for temptation.
That's even what
just don't enter the brothel.
Alan Watt said, you can't give the devil his due.
Hmm.
You can't say, tomorrow I am going to stop smoking, or tomorrow I'm going to start running. That's giving the devil his due. If the devil notices, then he's going to get you.
Hmm.
So it's like, I'm going to exercise more, and then you start exercising.
But also, you can't just use willpower to resist something that's right there, right? Like, you have to actually, okay, I want to stop smoking. I'm going to throw out all my cigarettes.
Yeah.
And I'm going to throw them out right now in a place where I can't get them back.
Yeah.
Like, you can't just say, I am still going to continue my habit of buying 2 packs a day, and I will just stack them in front of me and stare at them, and with my mighty willpower, I will not smoke. It's like, no, you don't do that. And the same goes for social media. You need to, so there are behavioral changes, or perhaps just ways of looking at the world, even, like with you, where you said, okay, I'll look at it as asynchronous. I won't look at it as if I'm sitting down and having a conversation with the person. And I will plan ahead so that, like when I was dating my girlfriend, I didn't have a cell phone, so I would use payphones. So I'd plan my day around payphones if I needed to contact her. It's like, okay, I'll meet up with you here, and if I don't see you in half an hour, I'll be at this payphone to phone you. Like, I would plan around it, right?
Yeah.
It makes you plan for these things. And the thing is, the phone gives you an illusion of always being contacted, and it also gives you the illusion of you have the right to always contact someone else, but neither of those are true. Yeah. Because, first of all, you don't have a right to contact anyone, and secondly, except maybe your parents, and your parents don't have a right to contact you. You have a right to contact your parents, maybe. And secondly, and your children have a right to contact you, obviously.
And the person that you've said, you are my dependent if there's, like, phoning emergencies services, or if it's like a caretaker and you're old
911
who has the red button and it's like heart attack, press red button.
There's an exception to every rule. I think I don't have to repeat myself.
We did a Connor podcast and a Kevin podcast. That's what I know. So I was like, hey,
I fixed social media, everybody. You can use it safely now. Just once everyone we'll talk about this more. But I just realized that I had written down in my notes, because these notes are now stretching back like a year or two, because it's just getting ridiculous, right? That's why I sorted them, and to get through them faster slightly. But
so you didn't have any repeats?
Yeah, but also it's a lot easier to get through them if I can do, like, if there's 10 disparate ideas, I can combine them into one and find the common theme.
Yeah.
So I talked about here that I had this theory that the universe is a mind which only activates its functions when called upon. So it's like Minecraft, where if you don't look at something and it's not there.
Yeah.
So I had this theory that I wrote about this a year or two ago in here that I want to talk about on the podcast. So do you know what the Nobel Prize was given out for at the end of last year? It's for proving that the universe wasn't locally real, which is exactly what I'm talking about here. So
how do you prove that?
I have no idea. But I think I did the hard part of thinking of the idea. The guy may have proved it, but I thought of it.
If you can prove that, it's actually like people agree. Yeah, Nobel Prize goes to you, because I have no idea how you prove that.
I know what he did actually. It was very simple. So he got like a...
He picked up a stick and he threw it on the ground. Then he walked away for 15 minutes and he walked back and the stick was still there.
No, what he actually did was he just had a weight in his hand, right?
Yeah. And
then he looked away from it really quickly, and then he noticed that the weight disappeared for a moment until it registered again. You just have to... He was getting chased by a bear, and he just covered his eyes, and the bear disappeared. I can't see you. You don't exist.
The guy trying to prove this, right?
Yeah.
He gets into an isolation chamber. And he closes his eyes and he plugs his ears. He plugs off his nose, so he's separated from the world. Then he gets up and he opens up the door to the isolation chamber. And he's just in the abyss, drifting.
Everything is gone.
Oops.
But the moment you observe it, it comes into existence. I have no idea how you could prove that. But my point being, I predicted dissenter, and I predicted the universe not being locally real. So social media fixes, they're coming.
We'll see.
Just you wait. And they're coming before this episode comes out, because that's how...
Maybe the boycotts will continue, though.
I really like them.
Actual boycotts, not just, let's boycott and then nothing happens, but actual momentum.
But The Reddit one, I'm not on board for it as a boycott. I want the company, but that's as a boycott. I don't really care about the end result, but the fact, except for the fact that it might work, because just look, if a bunch of SJW types got together and they boycotted Chick-fil-A, let's say they're its biggest customer, and they all boycott it, and it starts desperately going out of business until it changes its ways of having slaves in the kitchen or something.
Yeah.
I'd be like, yeah, or not showing gay pride parades in the kitchen, let's say. Not having gay pride flags in the kitchen. And it works. I think I'd still be happy to a degree, just because that shows that customers can get together, stop calling themselves consumers, stop saying what they're doing is consuming, and say, no, we get to choose what we buy.
Yeah.
Because that's capitalism, baby.
The line from Blind Guardian's song about the king, we can't take it anymore, our voices will be heard.
Yeah. Yeah,
I love that line. Like, I think about it a lot of, like,
capitalism...
We can't take it anymore, our voices will be heard. Remove his crown, take him down.
Capitalism only works if you stand up for yourself.
Yeah.
If you let them do whatever they want to you, capitalism doesn't work, and it is indeed a terrible system.
Yeah.
But capitalism works amazingly if you stand up for yourself.
And that's why monopolies are bad. When it's a necessary service.
Yes. But you always have... you can always fight the monopoly. You can, if someone monopolizes all the water, they better have one heck of an army on their side.
Yeah. Well, their army's hydrated.
Yeah. But at some point, everyone that has water will be left alive. Mm-hmm. And if they want customers, they're going to have to submit.
Yes.
And if they don't, then everybody wins that's still alive. So it's not great, but it's a solution.
Yes. Much like water is a solution.
Right, we'll end it there. No, that was actually all right. That was I like puns, but even that one was.
That was a very forced dad pun.
Well, it wasn't forced. It was just very lame.
He was a stinky one.
All right, but I appreciate it all the same. That was the connection I wouldn't have made. All right, ciao.